Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we can start with the third panel. The third panel, the topic is facing with the problems with the economic inequality, with the migrants, crisis of leadership, the relation with the geopolitical superpower, United States, China, and Russia. The first participant on this panel is Mr. Tilman Kuban. He's from Christian Democrat Union, CDU, of the most important political figure in Europe, Ms. Angela Merkel. And I think I will give the word to Mr. Kuban. Please proceed.
Just a short introduction, yes? Or
yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So thanks a lot for taking your time to discuss the future of Europe and the role of Serbia. In this case, it's quite an interesting time. As you know, we had the elections in the end of May. So at the moment, there are now all the stakeholders discussing in Brussels how it goes on. And in the morning I talked to David McAllister. You might know him. He's one of the guys who is also involved in the discussion. And he says, so I should send you the warmest greetings from him to Serbia. He will be also in the future involved in the development of Serbia to come closer to the European Union, and therefore we are quite close together. It's my third time here in Serbia, so I'm a friend of Serbia and I want to be it in the future. So let's discuss, and I'm very glad to have you all here and taking your time. Thanks a lot.
Okay, maybe we can set some questions to Mr. Kuban. First of all, I want to say as a president of Forum for Strategic Studies that it's our honor and pleasure that we have a company of the young politicians from European Union, politicians who could be one day maybe in government, maybe some other European institutions. And we want to hear your perception of the future of European Union, as well your perception of the future of German politics, especially German politics towards Balkans. And maybe you can say to us something how you expect to be formed European Commission. Do you have maybe some not exclusive information, but some your opinion who could be appropriate for not only for President of Commission, but for other posts in the European Commission, and how you see in general the future of Europe. What is your vision for Germany and for Europe as a young politicians? Because we have impression that now we have a very strong populist movement, and my thesis and thesis of some of us, it's that that populist movement could be not stopped with center or center right, who became as well populist, because we are obvious that politicians of olden age, with due respect, cannot solve this crisis. And my question is, what your political generation offer to Germany, to European Union, and for Balkans?
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. I think I will first talk about the European Commission and the discussion about that, and then about the future of Europe. In case of the reforms, I think we need to be smarter and smaller in the European Commission. At the moment we have 28 commissioners, so that's quite big. I don't know how many ministries you have in Serbia, but in Germany we have 15 ministers in our Bundesregierung. So it's quite interesting that we have that much people as the commissioners. That depends on the members in the European Union, but I think there can also be a different type of that you are maybe only every second round on the stage. So that might be a good idea, because in the last years we've seen that every commissioner wants to be part of the medias, wants to be part of the press. So there are a few ideas. They're not definitely needed in the European Union. So, and that makes people angry if they see that there's new bureaucratism about what's coming up out of the European Commission. And I think the first idea must be that we need a smarter and smaller Commission. And the president?
With 15 members, for example.
Yes, 14, 15, something like that, yes. So, and but that's not a, I think it's not a point that we can solve in the next few months. It must be, it is a vision for my generation, I think. And the next point is that, yes, we have these leading candidates in the European Union, and the leading candidate of the European People's Party was Manfred Weber. He was elected with more than 80% against the former Prime Minister of Finland, Alex Stubb. So now we have the biggest group in the parliament. So our point is that we are that we stay for these leading candidates program, and we say that Manfred Weber must be the next president of the European Commission. So that's quite sure for us, because I know that there are different opinions in Europe, but then you don't need this leading candidate idea. And we had this leading candidate idea to get more people involved into the European politics, not only seeing their politics as a member state, so to see people, to see faces who stands for Europe. And as the European People's Party, we had a great discussion before, and then a decision with a clear voting for Manfred Weber. So he must be the next. President of the European Commission. My idea, or my future of the European Union, is that I say make Europe bigger on big things and smaller on small things. So the main point is, we discuss about is it a good idea to have a United States of Europe, or is it a better idea to have the member states on their own? But I think the main point for the people is that you say we want to solve problems, and there are big problems who can't be solved as a member state. Also, as a German, I say we have 80 million inhabitants, and we see 1.3 million Chinese, and the Indians, and I think 450 million Americans. So we are just a small part of this world. So, and there are a few topics we can't solve as a state in Europe. We need to be together, and Europe has to solve these problems, because if we solve these problems, there will be more and more people saying, okay, we need the European Union, because there are security problems, there are problems about the climate change, there are problems about talking about migration, and all these points can't be solved as the Germans alone. So we need to do it together. And therefore, I think we need to be more we need to be more efficient in solving the big problems, but not doing the small stuff, as to say how to talk about the lights in the and have some bureaucratism about that, or have to talk about about food and how could food be produced or something like that. We don't need that much stuff for that. We need more about the big topics. That's my future vision for Europe. And then we will have more people who are really happy to be a part of the European Union and to be and to see the European Union as somebody who solves problems. So, and if we have that, we won't have that much populism anymore. I'm pretty sure about that.
Maybe Angela Merkel could solve the problem as the president of the European Commission. There is some idea, like in that way, that Angela Merkel can be the candidate for the president of the Commission.
Because
there was an idea of Emmanuel Macron.
Yes.
Yes,
that's why
but that's not an idea of Angela Merkel, and we need her. So
during this conference in the morning session, we have some opinions that Srđan Majstorović, Center for European Policy, he said that Spitzenkandidat probably will not be president of European Commission, and he expects as a very informed person, he lead one of the most efficient pro-European think tanks in Serbia, and he have an opinion that maybe candidate will be fined from somewhere beyond, behind, the side, and what you think about it, and what you think about relations of European Union, and especially on European foreign and security policy and relations with so-called geopolitical superpowers as US, China, Russia. Are you for some kind of politics of balance, or you have some strict attitudes towards these elephants?
I think the first point, if you see who's the Spitzenkandidat or leading candidate discussion, is a discussion between Emmanuel Macron and others in Europe who will be the powerful leader of Europe after Angela Merkel. So, and he wants to get his ideas now in front of the stage. So he's now the guy who wants to have ideas and bring them to the final. But as you see, first step of him was to talk about Margarete Vestager. So she is now out. I'm pretty sure she's out of the talking. Who will be the next? And then the next idea was Michel Barnier, and now the next idea is Angela Merkel. But we have still one position, and that is Manfred Weber, and we are pretty sure that it's always a good idea to have one position and not to change it every week.
Okay, also one question, sorry, about the position of CDU with the enlargement and the situation of Serbia, and also the relation between Serbia and Kosovo. Mm-hmm. How do you see that problem in the Christian Democrats, German Christian Democrats?
There is no problem. That's a big topic.
Yes.
And I hear it every time I'm here in Serbia. So, yes. First of all, I've seen the reporting of the European Commission and the discussion in Serbia, and I've heard of the discussion in Serbia about the last report 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. My perspective is that Serbia had good development in the freedom of speech, in the freedom of elections. But there are a few things to do to become a member of the European Union. There are a few points in the freedom of justice, in the main way, who is press and media in Serbia, and we have to work on it. And one thing is also quite heavy for the European Union, that we know that we had a few member states, or we have it, as new members of the European Union, who had border problems with other states. So because of our experience of the last years, and the discussion, maybe if you see Croatia and Slovenia and others, or Cyprus, we are pretty sure that there will be no other member state in the European Union who has an unclear border. So for us, it's quite clear that the conflict, the problem need to be solved, and then we can, but it's a clear definition. I think it's chapter 27 or something like
35,
that,
yeah.
or 35, yes. That we need to solve the border problem, because there will be no other way to be part of the European Union if there is an unclear border.
Okay, there was some ideas in Serbia about readjustment of borders to try to negotiate some
Yes, I've
changes
heard of it.
of the border. But there is a little bit hardline position by CDU, maybe, or not.
If you have changes of landscape in Europe, then we will start in Serbia, we'll go through Italy, we'll go through Spain, go through other ways in Europe. There are a few problems in Europe where you have some groups, if you see it in Spain or if you see it in Italy, who are not really see themselves as Italians or as Spains. Catalonia or Tyrol are the main points. So if we have the first idea to change the landscape, I'm pretty sure that will be a fire that we can't get any more fought. So unfought. So the problem is, we are not really, or or our idea is not to see some landscape changes, just to solve some problems. We have clear borders, or we have made clear borders, and our perspective is that we have to live with these borders we made.
Okay, thank you very much. I will ask the public also and our colleagues to take the occasion and to, yes, Professor Gaskin, please.
Thank you. It's the ordinary occasion to talk about hot issues in the European Union in this very exciting moment after the elections. So we still don't know how it's going to be about the selecting the candidates. But my question, since I wrote a paper to this topic, Mr. Chairman gave very inspirational title about the problems facing the European Union considering migrants. And we all know there are many problems, especially Germany's wishful destination, but also other countries. I usually ask my students, what country would you like to live in? And they usually say Germany and Sweden. And it proved to be obviously very true, considering these migrant routes. And I will talk later, but my interest would be to hear your impression about the current trends in policy manner, how it's going to be treated in this forthcoming period, considering some problems also with the cultural differences and, of course, security risks and about the freedom of movement, because there are some misinterpretation, how it is it for all or not as universal human right and so on. So I hope I was precise enough, and thank you in advance, and thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to say that we are in Germany, we are very thankful for the help of the Serbians during the period of 2015 and 16, when a lot of migrants came from states through Serbia, and we know that there was a big challenge for Serbia as well, and we know that they solved it very good. So I've seen also last time I've seen a home of migrants here near Belgrade. So it was very structural as you did it. So we are very thankful for that. I think you have to divide between two options. The first one is that there are migrants coming because there is a conflict in their region, and the second one is that there are others coming because they want to have a better perspective for their lives. So, and if you talk to your students, I think they are not leaving their home because of conflict. They are leaving their home because they want to have a better economic perspective. So, and therefore, we have 2 points. The first one is, if you have a conflict, we are very human to say, okay, we help the people if there is a conflict and if they can't stay at their home, but we can't help them for years. We help them for the time of the conflict, and if the conflict is over, we have given them in the last years, if they stay in Germany, education and new ideas to build up their state again. So that's the first thing. And on the other hand, you have the main problem: if everybody who wants to have a better perspective is coming to Germany, it will be quite interesting for us, because at the moment we have about 80 million migrants all over the world, and not everybody can come to Germany. So because we are only 80 million inhabitants in Germany. So the main thing is that you have a brain drain here in Serbia as well, because the good educated people say, okay, I would like to have a better perspective. I would like to go to Germany or somewhere else. And that's also a problem for an economic development in Serbia or in other states. So we have to be very careful. We need good educated people in Germany. We have a few jobs who need more workers in Germany. So we are very happy if we have some help from Serbians, but we also see if we get all good educated people out of Serbia, there won't be that way to grow up your economic. So it's quite a balancing. We need to talk about perspective and good ideas, so that there are Serbians going to Germany or other states in the European Union and can say that there is a good way to have this European Union, and say that to all others who are still in Serbia, because they will be always have friends in Serbia, they will be always have family in Serbia, and so on. So they are also quite a part of ambassadors of the European Union if they are in other member states. But we also have to be balancing it with the brain drain as well.
Okay, thank you. One more question, please. Mr. Professor Udovic, please, from Slovenia.
I have lots of questions, but I'm going to put on table just one. You said there's going to be no future for countries in the European Union that are going to have the open border issues.
No, an unclear border.
Oh, it's the same more or less. We are defining more or less. So I would like to ask you two questions, please. The first is, should Serbia enter in the European Union according to the borders that are defined in the Constitution, or according to the borders that are defined, how to say, in natural manner? And the second, for me, the issue now, if you are saying so clearly and putting on the table, no open border issues for entering the European Union, the situation in the Western Balkans, the situation means what? No enlargement to the Western Balkans. So, can you answer on these two questions? The first is the most, I think, is the most important, and the second is how to say that but I'm not from Serbia. I'm just
So where are you from?
Slovenia.
Slovenia, okay. Yes, so there's a border conflict as well. We know the problem.
We should choose
No,
as a foreign minister.
No.
This is not some kind of deal.
There's no problem anymore there.
Okay. Okay. So for you it's solved, or for the Croatians as well?
For international law. It's all from the international law.
Okay, good.
So?
We have a border now.
In the Constitution or in the...
In the Constitution, yes.
Yeah, it's defined.
In the Serbian constitution.
Ah.
No, it's not the same.
It's quite different. It's quite unclear at the moment. So
I can help out because
okay.
There is an accession negotiation framework which clarifies that there needs to be a comprehensive agreement, legally binding, of formalization between Serbia and Kosovo, and whatever will be within this legally binding agreement is up to the two parties to decide, and it needs, of course, to fulfill certain conditions, to be implementable, and so on and so on. I'm sure you are very well aware of all these adjectives.
I am, but I'm not discussing the legal part, just the political part, because for me it's important, the political part. We have the legal part set by Slovenia and Croatia under the umbrella of the European Union, and we are going to see the problems now. So I would like just to see the political part, the political decision, because I was shocked about the political statement, not about anything else, because I can understand the logic behind it. So, about the political statement, can you just explain whether you're going to decide in Germany?
we don't have to decide it.
No,
we don't have to decide it because it's a decision of the European Union.
But you have to ratify the agreement.
At the end, yes, but at the end we need also. First of all, we have the chapter 35, and if it's not closed, there don't need to be a decision.
Okay, I forget.
From Germany is rather clear. So
yes.
Germany is not the constitution of Serbia, so it's a recognition that Germany says Kosovo is an independent country. So it's get about.
Let me ask a simple question, but on this track. Bosnia has no border agreement neither with Serbia nor with Croatia. With Croatia it has, but it hasn't been ratified. So it has an open borders issue on 99% of its borders. Imagine that Bosnia is right at the doorstep of full EU membership, but it doesn't have border agreements with two of its biggest neighbors. Per your statement, it would not be possible for Bosnia to accede to the EU if it did not have these border issues resolved. Even though if it's political, not really charged with question, it's not the question of Kosovo. Because what you say, when you frame it like that, it applies very much to both Serbia and Montenegro, because Serbia and Montenegro don't have a border agreement right now, and Bosnia, Croatia don't have border agreement, Bosnia and Serbia have no border agreement. So it's vastly, it captures much more than Serbia-Kosovo relations. So are you aware of that?
As I told you, we had a few border problems in the past, and that's from our perspective the point that we say we don't want to have it in the future. So there will be no other member state, no further member state of the European Union.
So it would apply to Bosnia.
No enlargement with the non-resolved border problem. We understand that. It's clear position. Okay, I forgot to say that Mr. Kuban is president of the youth of CDU. That it's a good chance to become prime ministers one day, maybe in Germany.
We collect money for campaign. Yeah. To donor some money from.
I don't know if. Thank you very much for your participation. It was a pleasure for us to discuss with you. I don't know if there is maybe one question or no. No. Okay.
We don't need money from Serbia.
Just joke.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kuban. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next participant is from Slovenia, Professor Boštjan Udović. He's from the Faculty of Social Science of University of Ljubljana. And he will expose now. Please, Mr. Professor.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like just to point maybe out some of the parallel points that I see here that are relevant. The first is the title of this panel. It should be Challenges, Not Problems, because it is a positive note.
Yes, yes.
Maybe because problems is always connected to the negative. So
thank you.
So it should be challenges, not problems, because I love challenges, always not problems. Okay. The second issue that is relevant here is that we should discuss about the future of the European Union. We should have a vision on the internal, what we should do within the European Union and outside the European Union, so the relations with the superpowers. So the internal part is relevant about, how to say, over bridging the democratic deficit that is coming, and I'm coming later on to the democratic deficit, which is quite a problematic issue in the European Union. And the second is the relation with these 3 or 4 superpowers. I think the most problematic idea is that the European Union nowadays is lacking a sort of common solutions. We are trying to find some common solutions, but we are more or less ineffective. That is why we are returning back to regionalism. And we saw this in the migration crisis 2015, when the Balkan route find a single solution starting from Austria and going back to the Balkans, because there was no solution at the European level. The second issue that I would like to point out is we have a lot of declarations. We have, I don't know, about the Western Balkans, the Thessaloniki Declaration, we have then the Sofia Declaration, everything else, but we need actions. So we need activities, and these activities should be visible. And related to these activities, and the most important part here, it was already exposed in the morning by my colleague Janja, is the relevance of public awareness. So the public awareness of the, how to say, of the power, of the relevance of the European Union. Because we are facing not problems in the European Union, but we are facing the questions about why is the European Union relevant? It is relevant anymore, and so on. So these questions are important for us, and raising public awareness is important, especially in countries that are in the accession process. The second issue is that we should find a common ground for single decision. It's quite clear we cannot find a common ground for all decisions. That is why we are having some different initiatives, like it is 3Cs initiative that was last week in Slovenia. It is a sort of initiative that, how to say, is trying to leapfrogging the European Union, making something as an axis from Zagreb to Warsaw to Washington. So, okay, last week the Slovenian presidency corrected it a little bit. with the European element, but this 3Cs initiative should not be complementary to the European Union, should be part of the European Union, or whether those states should maybe not participate. Because if you're having the division again between the old Europe, North Europe, South Europe, whatever, like we had in the migration crisis, in the banking or financial crisis, then we are having a problem in the next 5 years. And I think the most important part we are missing here, and this is part of the internal, if we would like to strengthen the European Union, it's not enough just to strengthen the, I don't know, the economic equality and everything else. It's also the infrastructure. From Sweden to Spain, you need 24 hours. From Latvia to Trieste, from Szczecin to Trieste, whether you would like to have it, like Churchill had it, you need 3 days. 3 days with the train. So 24 hours, 3 days. And I counted from Brussels to Warsaw, you need 4 days. So no, this is the problem here. And from Slovenia to Budapest, which is Ljubljana, Budapest is 500 kilometers, you need 9 hours. So the infrastructure is one of the most important parts that we should deal, not just north-south, but also west-east or east-west, depends from the case to case. And I really like the idea of having something smarter and smaller. This is important, to having something that is more just in time. The action should be just in time, not, I don't know, 3 months after or a year after. But here, smart and smaller, the perception, what should be smart and smaller, is different from a large country perspective and from a small country perspective. We are debating from 2004 the problem of the first tier and the second tier Europe. Now we are having the first, second, and third tier Europe. So I think that the proposal that was put on the table by Mr. Kuban, so to reduce, which is in the Lisbon Treaty, that's true, the number of commissioners, can again position the idea of the first tier and second tier Europe, if there's not going to be the round up of all countries. So, meaning rounding up the all countries, so circulating the commissioners, means that sometimes it can happen in a mandate that Germany, France, or I don't know who, is not going to have a commissioner.
No, it's not like that, because they imagine some other system.
Yeah, sure. I know the system, but
permanent place for big
but
countries.
but then we are having again the question of the first and second tier Europe.
Okay.
So there are going some countries that are not going to have commissioner or every 15 years, and some other countries are going to have the commissioners always. And here we are coming to the issue of the internal problem, and is the lack of democracy. So the democratic deficit, as is known, and the Spitzenkandidaten are the most prominent, how to say, vision of the lack of democracy. Political parties at the European level, the Christian Democrats, the Socialists, and the left parties, they put their candidates, they're going to be their flagships, being the Spitzenkandidat. And now we are expecting, or they are expecting, they are going to be the head of the Commission or the head of the European Central Bank or whatever it is, which institution they're going to catch up. But I think this process should be a little bit reversed. I should start maybe as a provocative issue. The head of the Commission should be a woman coming from so-called new member states. And then we are not having anymore nobody of the Spitzenkandidates, neither Margaret Vestager, nobody else, because we are trying to find somebody from the new member states, so-called new member coming 2004, which are being new old. And here we are having a clear cut of the partitocracy, like it is in our countries. So the parties are deciding for the people. We are having, I don't know, the initiative for 1 seat. I don't understand the initiative for 1 seat. We have the 1 seat in the European Parliament. It is in Strasbourg. Why the Parliament is in Brussels, I don't understand. We have 1 seat which is in Strasbourg. Yeah, but this is in the treaties. And this is important to know if we are going to follow. And this is the problems they are permitting the European Union, because we are not. And that is why I agree and support the idea of smarter and smaller. This is important. Yeah, but we should start with following the legal rules. This is about the internal issues. About the external issues. In the next mandate, we are going to have 3 problems. The first are the United States of America. The second are, challenges. Challenges. No.
And then we come to the challenges.
No, okay. The second is China, and the third is the Russian Federation. I think the main issue here is that we should know that we should establish a partnership with those 3 countries, or with those 3 superpowers. Because having them as an enemy, treating them as an enemy, or whatever it is, or a competitor or whatever it is, it can make a problem in the perception of different countries. But on the other hand, you are having some countries that don't understand the other countries. I don't know, the Chinese are coming by far to the Central Europe, and nobody's reacting to them. They are coming to Trieste, not to Szczecin yet, but they are coming to Trieste. Nobody's reacting to them. Because we are saying, oh, the Chinese, they are somewhere there, they are just doing something, they're eating a piece of rice and that's it. It is the stereotype that we had in the 80s, or maybe in the 90s. It's not anymore like this. We are still thinking, again, about the idea of the Cold War. We're having the Cold War, we're having the United States, we're having Russian Federation. If you are with the Russian Federation, you're against the United States. It's not anymore like this. So, you know, these things are important, not just from the political view, but also from the economical view. So the economical view is going to define the next mandate in the European Union. And that is why I would like to establish a single platform saying, I'm the European Union, I'm the fourth superpower. Russian Federation, China, United States, and the European Union. And to end, for establishing European Union, again a superpower, we need a leadership and we need a vision. Without the vision, we cannot then have a superpower in the European Union. I'm stopping here.
Thank you very much, Professor Udovic. There is so many questions that we can discuss, but we will let that for later. The next participant, Professor Dr. Gordana Gasmi from the Institute of Comparative Law of Belgrade. Please.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for organizing this extraordinary conference.
I also regret that some speakers are not present for the sake of debate, but okay. I wrote a paper considering this interesting title, and now I actually eliminated the word problems. So the title is, I really accept, EU facing challenges, migrants and relations with global superpowers, Quo Vadis Europe after European elections 2019. I will quote Antonio Gramsci, Italian philosopher. Europeans, like most other inhabitants of the planet, are currently facing the crisis of politics as we know it. A state of interregnum described a time in which the old is already dead or dying, but the new has not yet been born. Between the global powers and national politics, there is the European Union. Perhaps the idea of Europe was and remains utopia, but it has been and remains an active utopia, struggling to consolidate the otherwise disconnected multi-directional actions. How active that utopia will ultimately turn out to be will depend ultimately on its actors. This is the quote of Professor Bowman, Siegfried, Professor Emeritus of 2 months ago, who wrote actually about the future of Europe, and I would like to add that according to recent opinion poll in member states, only 88% of the EU population consider that they would lose nothing if the Union will collapse. It is the second biggest democratic vote, so that is very positive news, actually, which is contradictory to Eurosceptic flaws. And I will skip the part about the results of elections. We heard a lot during the first part of this conference. But I would like to emphasize something about main features of the EP importance, Parliament importance in the system of the European Union. And why is it so important to analyze European elections for the future of the Union? The answer lies in the significant role of the Parliament in the overall institutional structure and in the decision-making process of the EU. It was a very long battle for the Parliament ever since the 80s to obtain equal status with Council of Ministers in legislative procedure since Spinelli announced the need to strengthen the institutional position of the Parliament together with other federalists. Historia magistra vitae est. This old Latin proverb is certainly applied in contemporary situation. More precisely, increasing the competencies of the parliament through decades was seen as an effective instrument to combat democratic deficit. Existing democratic deficit is one of major challenges. Even in today's functioning of the European Union, I'm quoting now Professor William Kaiser, who recently gave his speech in Serbia some few days ago. Negotiations started actively at the end of May, so we will see the result. But what is also important, I would like to stress that any forthcoming legal and institutional upgrading of the European Union must begin with the need to apply the principle of subsidiarity in a flexible manner, and with the necessity of continuously strengthening the decision-making efficiency and democratic legitimacy of the EU decision-making process. In this context, the European Parliament has a particularly prominent role as a catalyst for integration processes within the Union, or what's so-called deepening. In addition, the role of Parliament is also a determining factor in the achieved level of removal of democratic deficit. Specifically, as Professor Philippe Manin from Sorbonne, from Paris, usually always emphasizes, the EU member states are the main constituent entities of the Union, and as such dictate the course and pace of institutional reform of the Union. So contemporary discussion whether the EU is a post-sovereign community or it is a kind of parliamentary model through the strengthening of the role of the Parliament aims to emphasize the theory of implicit powers, which defines the jurisdiction of the Union in achieving the goals. So we are witnesses of a kind of legal and institutional crisis of the EU, fatigue de l'Europe, say the French, in the last decade. I would like now to stress just a few very important legal aspects of the role of Parliament that are actually outcome of the new Lisbon Treaty some 10 years ago, which grants an increase in Parliament's powers through the right of Parliament first to elect the President, not just the right to be consulted. And then, furthermore, the Parliament developed a practice which is not legally grounded in the EU Treaty to hear each of the commissioners individually before deciding to approve the composition. This led, just to remind, to the withdrawal of initial proposal of Barroso Commission in September, some 15 years ago, and he wanted actually to prevent negative reaction of the Parliament. And it happened again in 2009, so it is actually over normative features of the Parliament. Also, the Lisbon Treaty introduces a new budgetary procedure which leads to increased parliamentary powers. It is about the fact that there are no longer so-called compulsory expenditures on which the Council of Ministers had the final decision, contrary to the so-called non-compulsory. Actually, now, after Lisbon Treaty, Parliament really becomes the second hand of the budgetary authority in the true sense of the word, because it stresses and shares the competence in this area equally with the Council of Ministers. Consequently, Parliament has been placed in equal position, and also with this, Parliament has also received realistic options to directly influence the establishment and implementation of the EU policies. The procedure for granting Parliament's approval, so-called assent procedure, refers to important EU decisions with international implications, such as accession of new member states, association agreements with the countries non-members, third countries, organizations, objectives of the Structural and Cohesion Fund, tasks and powers of the European Central Bank. Within this procedure, Parliament is empowered to give or deny consent to the proposal of the submitted regulation. Also, in the case of a member state exit, as with Great Britain, the Treaty of Lisbon provides for mandatory Parliament's consent to conclude an agreement on exit. In addition, in the sphere of amending the primary legislation, the founding treaties, Parliament, after Lisbon Treaty, won the right to propose a revision of the EU Treaty. This has come after persistent Parliament's demands in this area, which were rejected by Member States until the adoption of Lisbon Treaty. And also we heard also something about co-decision procedure, so I would not repeat, but I would like to stress the significance of the role of the Parliament within EU political system, which is reflected in the fact that many statesmen, both from the EU members themselves and also outside the Union, use the Parliament as a platform for expressing their views on European integration and other important international issues. Thus, Parliament acquires an international significance that goes beyond its normative competencies and the basic characteristics of its position. And this gives to the Parliament obvious international political importance. And now something about the future of the EU. I gave the title Turbulent Story about Migrant Crisis, and also without some items about the relations with global players. So the story about the future of the EU starts with analysis not only with European elections, but also we are witnessing actually the problems, and I'm very glad, I also like to say that I share these points that Mr. Cuban has announced. Actually, therefore, more than ever, the Union is facing very difficult decisions in the near future. So my question is, my dilemma, which is not only theoretical, is it on the international scene Europe fortress, l'Europe forteresse, or Europe without borders? Remains to be seen through the solution in the upcoming midterm period. The Dublin asylum system has been the most criticized by Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, but also by other EU officials, as it provides the greatest pressure on the member states that are on the front line of the migrant flows. Article 3 of the Lisbon Treaty binds the EU as a non-state actor to align itself with United Nations norms, as well as to the strict observance and the development of international law, including the respect for the principles of UN Charter in its role in promoting and protecting human rights through all its actions. I must say, in time when I was working as a legal advisor to the International Organization for Migration in the region, it was not in the time of migrant flows so intensive, but there were some kind of contradictory articles considering Dublin system and also UN principles. But okay, freedom of movement is established as a basic human right, and at the time it is one of the 4 freedoms on which the EU market is based. On the other hand, the protection of refugees, as Mr. Cuban also confirmed, is legally guaranteed. And on the other hand, there is a justifiable fear of the members of the Union from the massive flooding of refugees and accompanying inevitable security risks. For example, terrorist attacks in Paris, in Brussels, and so on. So actually, the justified fear of compromising the security of EU member states. In the absence, as also some of speakers have emphasized, of comprehensive security and defense identity of the Union, as also Mr. Chairman said, is a kind of economic giant, but the opposite for political, let me say, dimension. The demands for enhanced EU external border control and for internal reform of the Union's common migration policy, of course, are necessary consequence. So I also wrote something about legal and institutional frameworks in this context. I'm sorry, I'm really a bloody lawyer. I'm not political scientist, but I will not now give a lecture about the articles of the Lisbon Treaty. What I wanted to stress, actually, it's noteworthy that the EU leaders, based on all this and also on the funds that have been nominated for the forthcoming period for the new fund called Neighborhood Development and International Cooperation Instrument, actually they have emphasized the need to step up cooperation with countries where migrants originate or transit. and agreed that migration issue can only be addressed at EU level. This is also the demand of EU citizens according to the EU barometer of some few months ago. So consequently, EU priority in the forthcoming period is a significant strengthening of EU's external borders, and also due to political differences, as you said, Professor Udovic, no unity in many things, especially in the area of security. Radical reform of the EU Dublin asylum system remains to be agreed, hopefully in near future. So besides migration issues, another vital determinant item for the future of the Union represents its relations with USA, China and Russia being the most important global players in contemporary international relations. European policy towards Russia is a divisive point. So we are witnessing that some populist leaders, such as Orban in Hungary and Salvini in Italy, have both been friendly towards Mr. Putin. At the same time, they have criticized the sanctions taken by the EU against Russia since the annexation of Crimea and conflict in Ukraine. However, although they criticize the Union policy, they have never and not yet used their veto. Relevant reason, according to my opinion, is that actually there is an energy dependence of the EU towards Russia. Also, the dynamics of economic and political EU sanctions renewal each year, starting from 2014, indicates the temporary character of it. I don't know if you will agree, but actually it remains to be seen a further development of relations between EU and Russia, taking into account new events in relations with USA and other factors. With disappearance of bipolar world, new multipolar relations have developed, but very unstable. Precisely, current trade war between USA and China has colored the contemporary international relations. Furthermore, the United States has abandoned its previous position of strong Western ally of the European Union, which was proved in many occasions. So someone spoke about European style of globalization, but actually I wrote that in the globalization era, there is no European style, unfortunately. The EU is left to find its own influence path. EU established common system for monitoring investments from China. So it's not only about rice eating, but it represents simple information exchange among member states. Bearing in mind considerable commercial dumping coming from China, as well as China's enormous investments in EU member states, but not always transparent, the final result is great division among member states in the battle for those investments instead of EU unity. So I agree with Professor Udovic, there is no EU unity in many things. So in this manner, I will conclude, China is on the way of economic dominance towards the Union with all parallel consequences for the future EU stability. And let me conclude that the most recent polls show that 68% of Europeans deem that their country benefits from EU membership. So this is actually the highest score since 1983. 49 say they are happy with the democratic functioning of the Union. 48% deem that their vote counts in the Union. 48 want the European Parliament to play a greater role. So the vital question, according to my opinion, of the future positive development of the Union depends on the EU capacity to make effective decisions, both on external political agenda and even more internally, in terms of stimulating economic growth, employment, and sustainable development. The functioning of the Parliament, more than that of the national parliaments, fosters majorities of ideas. New European elections have certainly brought more democratic legitimacy to the Union, and it remains to be seen how this potential for growth of the EU prosperity is going to be implemented. To the extent that it is provided in the EU, it will be realistic to conclude that it is democratic union with optimal institutional structure. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Gasmi. You mentioned the name of Professor Philippe Manin, who was my professor many, many years ago in some other lives alive that I lived in Paris.
I know that.
Okay,
I was expecting you.
The next participant is Dr. Mirjana Dokmanovic. It's from Forum for Strategic Studies of the Institute of Social Science. Please, Doctor.
Thank you so much. My topic is related to considering the EU policies from the perspective of above, from the perspective of the ordinary citizens. Just to say a few words before, when I was in Berlin about 15, 16 years ago, attending an international conference, I arrived afternoon at the hotel and decided to go out from the hotel to have a short walk. And I was shocked when I entered at the biggest avenue under the Linden. The first sight really shocked me. There was a huge, huge column of people marching in the middle under the Linden under the Brandenburg State. Hundreds, thousands passing peacefully. I asked what happened, what's happening now, but one of them replied me, nothing happened. We are just marching like this regularly every month, protesting against the governmental employment, social security, and pension reform. Well, after a while, I attended another international conference in Amsterdam, and I have witnessed the same picture. Tens of thousands of citizens gathered from the whole country to peacefully protest against the governmental employment, social security, and pension reform. And I have witnessed these the same pictures of the huge civic protest all over Europe and the European capitals, at the European social forums, meetings in Paris, Geneva, Florence, and so on, the Occupy London protest in the UK, and so on. And all these protests were, before the 2008 economic and financial crisis. These are the people, citizens. Obviously, they did not have another mean to express their voices and their interest than on the street. And these are it was really the grassroots movements, social movements consisted from the labor movements, regional movements, feminist movements, environmental and anti-nuclear movements. So, this is the picture, and when I analyzed the roots of this, the causes of the rising Euroscepticism, populism, and the radical right may be found in this increasing discontent of the many with the EU policies, which also fuels social mobilization in the rise in the different countries. These social movements blame that years of austerity and antisocial policies put in place by the EU institutions and the governments have created explosive social and political situation that has benefited the far right. These social movements also blame that there has been a continuous destruction of labor and employment rights, that there are new forms of labor and wage exploitations entering. The figures indicate that private wealth grows faster than workers' income. Social networks claim that the European debt crisis is basically not the result of the government spendthrifts, inefficient bureaucracy, or whatever else is produced as an explanation, but is the result of an extreme disparity of existing wealth and of a system that continuously intensifies these disparities. While public indebtedness is increasing, the private wealth continues to grow in value. According to the data of the attack, also a big social movement, in 2008, for instance, the private wealth amounted to 69.5 trillion euros. The private wealth is still highly concentrated. The richest 1% of European society hold more than 30% of it, while the poorer half of the society has more or less nothing. According to data of the Social Europe, almost 142 million Europeans out of around 500 million are at risk of poverty. National poverty rates vary between over 25% in Romania and less than 10% in the Czech Republic. The official Eurostat figure for the EU as the whole is much less. It's 70.3%. However, according to the Social Europe, if a proper property threshold is calculated, the figure comes out significantly higher at 28.2%. So this intra-country inequality is increased by welfare cuts, labor market degradation, deregulation, and globalization. Inter-country inequality is rooted in complex causes with historical, social, political, and economic dimension. And inter-country inequality is higher than inequality within them. Compared at exchange rates, the average per capita income of the richest countries is 10 times as high as in the poorest. An even more dramatic picture of absolute inequality emerges if one compares the average per capita income of the richest national quintile and the poorest national quintile. As the data indicates, the richest national quintile is that of Luxembourg, with an annual income of almost 74,000 euros at exchange rates. The poorest quintile is that of Romania, with an annual income of only 685 euros. The ratio is more than 1 to 100 at exchange rates. Probably the most important consequences is the high immigration from the poorer EU member countries to the richer one, as many of you mentioned this. Countries as Romania, Lithuania, and Latvia have lost almost 10% of their population, and this trend is obviously everywhere in Croatia, and I mean Hungary, and in all the others Eastern European countries. This immigration has bolstered national populist tendencies. Many researchers warn that the dynamics of inequality gives little prospect of reducing absolute inequality in the future. Numerous civic movements and networks such as ATTACK, Alter Summit, Occupy Network, and feminist networks such as Women and Development Network, Karate Coalition, and so on, they claim that it is completely unacceptable for the cost of the crisis to be imposed mainly on those who had nothing to do with creating it. While banks are being saved with trillions of euros and private wealth remain untouched, large sections of the populations are confronted with massive decreases of living standards. So the policy choices that have introduced these inequalities in the EU are the same that have produced emerging inequalities at the global scale, namely market concentration, corporate concentration, and financial capital concentration. And these tendencies have rooted in and bolstered by the prevailing neoliberal policy. The key pillars of the neoliberal policy are free trade and free unrestricted capital mobility, monetary restraint, and budgetary austerity, the flexibilization of labor markets, the free movement of labor, and the expression of wage demands, the privatization of public companies and services, as well as the reconstructuring of welfare states. These principles have been quite central to the idea of the European Union. the major policy issues, such as the single market strategy, European competition policy, economic and monetary integration, and even the European employment strategy, have enhanced free trade and free capital mobility, monetary restraint and budgetary austerity, the flexibilization of labor markets, and the erosion of employment security. The creation of the single market essentially advanced intra-European competition, which, according to the liberalization advocates, would strengthen European business and benefit consumers, because monopolistic firms or oligopolic cartels can no longer use their economic dominance to distort market pricing. In the period of good time until the fall of the Berlin Wall, the wealth and the profit have been distributed less or more on the more fair basis, securing social welfare for the majority. However, the cost of the 2008 crisis have been imposed on the minority. The implemented policies delivered austerity for many and socialism for the few. Besides, the most important factors in driving the concentration of the wealth has been adoption of the more aggressive tax policies, which increased reliance on indirect taxes, declining corporate and personal income rates on the highest earners. Meanwhile, the expenditure of public services and social protection have been cut back. These policies have always fallen disproportionately on those who can least afford to pay. The gender impact of the austerity measures are well documented. The liberalization of public services gained momentum in the early 90s, demanding the liberalization of telecommunications, electricity, postal services, and gas. The European countries have created larger public sectors in the post-war years to achieve a broader influence of the economy beyond monetary and tax policies. The expansion of public services played a special role in the post-war expansion of the European welfare states. It created not only employment for opportunities for women, but also aided them to combine paid work with the care duties and family responsibilities. There was a fundamental belief running all these provisions that liberalization of these sectors will create competition and that would benefit consumers. However, it showed that this consumer-oriented action presented a lucrative business opportunity for the private capital. As a result, some scholars conclude that whereas the EU countries previously had publicly owned monopolies, now they have politically created multinational private oligopolies. Contrary to the rhetoric to the European social model, the integration process allowed policymakers, backed by the leading players of the European capital, to erode the social rights that were achieved in the post-war decades and that represent the essence of the various European social models. This arrangement gives priority to competition and monetary issues at the expense of social demands. So that's
take care of the time.
Yes. So that these are all the demands and the warnings of the social movements. And there is the factors that we also witnessed these direct responses with the reactions of the angry citizens to governmental policies at the streets of recently of the number of European cities, such as the West Zone in Paris. So these social movements, particularly those who have recently developed in struggles for social justice and gender justice, they are at risk for expressing Eurosceptic position that are promoted on the rights. But majority of them, they are not Eurosceptic. They are not against the EU. We are for transforming EU for the benefit of all.
Thank you very much. Dokmanovic. Now it's the time for my colleague from Institute of European Studies, Dr. Milan Igrutinovic. Please, Mr. Igrutinovic, proceed.
Thank you, and many thanks to Institute za društvenih nauka and to Neven who called me to participate in this well-done conference. I will do something completely different from Dr. Dokmanovic. I will look at bird's eye view on Europe, not from the citizens' point of view, but from the point of view of its foreign security policies, and look at the prospects of EU strategic autonomy, a term that's well, loosely defined as the ability and the will to make and implement your own decisions in the global affairs right now. This sort of position or wish to have this position, of course, has internal and external components that overlap, of course, because there is never only a foreign policy or never only an internal policy. Actually, for the last few years, a lot has been done institutionally in the EU about its common foreign and security policy. First thing to notice is the establishment of PESCO, that is Permanent Structured Cooperation in Defense, one that was provisioned for in Lisbon Treaty, but has been well absent from the agenda for 8 or 9 years, let's say. I think we can agree that 2014 Crimea crisis and Ukrainian crisis were a wake-up call in many respects to the EU, that many initiatives regarding defense and military budgets have been were a spin-off, so to speak, of this crisis that happened on several tracks. One track was NATO, the Wales Summit in September 2014, the sort of re-establishment of American presence in Europe, and now the forward presence in Poland in free Baltic states, and its cooperation with Romania. This is where the Free Seas initiative kind of falls under this sort of umbrella. Then the EU started to think about its own actions, its own plans, its own budgets. It understood the need to increase its military expenditures, and furthermore, it understood the need not to create a European army. That's a term that's really misused and abused across political spectrum, most of all during Brexit debates, but in order to make fragmented, incompatible national militaries a bit more compatible, a bit more modern, a bit more properly armed with modern weapons. On the heels of the Permanent Structured Cooperation comes the European Defense Fund, which is now, as I understand, being negotiated. Its budget is being negotiated within the multi-year financial framework. There has been some opposition in the European Parliament to that because legally, under Lisbon Treaty, European budget cannot be used to finance military expenditure, but it can be used in research and development phase because you can finance technological innovation that you are going to use. In between everything else, you're going to use it in military terms. So the EU did manage to make some advancement there, and so the new commission that is going to come is going to have a bit clearer situation with that. We have modicums of this European army in European Union battle groups, one of which Serbia is part of, which is something that is easily forgotten here in the Balkans. So we are a military neutral party that could be engaged in a conflict alongside its other EU member states. The second part is of meaningful reform within the EU is the fuller implementation of the so-called Passarella clause, which is Article 31 of the Lisbon Treaty, which allows for qualified majority voting in CFSP issues. We had an interesting case in early May this year when there was a drafted joint EU statement on Israel settlements in Palestine, which was supposed to be read as an EU position in the UN Security Council and was opposed in the very last minute by Hungary, which has its own fair share of good relations between Viktor Orban and Benjamin Netanyahu. This is the political link that worked there. And legally it vetoed the joint EU statement. But the Passarella clause, the ability to make decisions not by unanimity but by qualified majority voting was introduced, and not the Romanian ambassador who was supposed to represent EU at the moment of the UN, but Finland ambassador, because Finland is sitting at the Security Council. Finland ambassador read the statement in the name of 27 EU states, excluding Hungary because he took notice that Hungary did not want to do it. But that statement has a full force of the EU behind it. So the introduction of the QMV voting was one of the part of the both EPP and ALDE electoral campaigns issues that was said that they're going to ask for its fuller implementation. It allows this sort of voting to be done for three specific sets of issues. One is human rights issues, which has been used here on Israel. Second is on the introduction of sanctions, which can touch upon relations with Russia, because it's not going to be enough to have one or two countries to try to block renewal of sanctions to Russia. It's going to be a far bigger group of countries, which is a task that's not going to be very easy for Russia to do. And the third part is the establishment of civilian Csdp missions. So this is a looking small-time improvement that can be implemented by the coming commission. We are going to see, of course, whether that is going to come to practice, but we have a precedent that has been already done, and I think that expectation can be that it is going to be implemented more and more, because major European powers and even in nation states and true political groupings are sitting behind it. What is we have mentioned a few times Brexit today, but I think not nearly enough, or not in depth, because we kind of been entertained by the show in UK Parliament over the last 6 months, because it did not adopt the withdrawal agreement. It had not really adopted any version of any decision on that. And now with the strongest possibility that Boris Johnson is going to be next Prime Minister, which is, well, funny enough for us, and his support that he's getting from Donald Trump, and showing once again the sinews of new US policy towards Europe, we can say that the no-deal Brexit is ever more likely than the adoption of the withdrawal agreement as it is now, because it's not going to be renegotiated. It's going to be take it or leave it, and there is strong chance that it's going to be leave it. So why is this important? Because Europe can find itself in the next 1, 3, 5 years having 3 major countries on its borders, UK, Russia, and Turkey, without having strong, I mean, Russia and Turkey are obvious cases, but having no good, productive relationship with any of them. 2 of these countries are permanent members of the UN Security Council. It's completely new, completely different security settings on the very border of the EU. Now, of course, we don't have to expect specifically acrimonious relations with British, but the fallout of no-deal Brexit that's going to spill over the negotiations on future relations, trade relations, Irish border issue, it's really hard to imagine how it's going to be positive and productive if no-deal Brexit actually happens, which is now looking very likely. So it is completely new setting historically, for the not just prior to British membership in the EEC in 1973, but for the last 50 or 60 years, having major countries in Europe outside of security arrangements in Europe, minding that UK is still going to be part of NATO. But the call of Donald Trump's White House and its specific connections to this wing of the Tory party, it might prove to be an axis that is very, very, very detrimental to EU's ideas, visions of multilateral, rules-based order, such as it is right now, or that the EU hopes to achieve. What I said, the fundamental fear is that things can be sliding into a new bipolarity between United States and China. Russia is not top-tier economic power. It is a strategic challenge, as EU likes to say in its documents, and I think it's a very nice word. It's not a nemesis. It's not necessarily adversary. It is, of course, a security issue for a number of its neighbors that are EU and NATO member states, but it is not necessarily an adversary. It can be managed, not necessarily productively, but it can be managed for years to come. But the world in which China and USA are dominating global economic affairs, either through adversarial capitalism or through their own bilateral deals that are going to reflect on anyone else, and with Europe having no say in that is a very bad place for the EU. So what is the gaining of this sort of strategic autonomy is not just an option for the EU, not something that Europe has to strive for, but it's going to be pushed into that. Because on one hand, America is going to be involved in Europe through NATO. It's going to be involved not towards the whole continent, but towards specific sets of countries in the Eastern Europe, with which it's going to develop further cooperation with, I mean, Poland, Romania, free Baltic states, of course, Russian security, security threats from Russia are the main logic behind it. But the whole underwriting of European security that's been done by the United States since early 50s is really no more. And I think Berlin understands it more than any other major power in Europe. So it leaves Germany, it leaves France to deal with this sort of new situation. France is a UN Security Council member state. It's a nuclear power, not on the level of United States or Russia. The issue of nuclear sharing might come up as a topic. The idea of gradually rising European military capabilities is going to be a thing for the next 5 years, that is for sure. And differentiating between the US and China is going to be a major part of EU's diplomacy. Because China has come to Europe, it came here through Belt and Road Initiative, it came here through China Plus 17 now mechanism. It came geographically to Eastern and Southeastern Europe. To Germany it came with money, it bought parts of Daimler, it bought KUKA, robotics company that is now a major part of discussion between Juncker, Tusk and Xi Jinping in EU-China summits. EU is trying to defend parts of its economy through screening mechanisms for foreign direct investment, which is aimed, of course, against China. But major parts of Europe are not necessarily interested in that because they don't have technological companies to defend. Eastern Europe doesn't really have many advanced companies to defend through that mechanism, like Germany has, like France has, Italy maybe. So managing this relations with China in a productive way, in non-adversarial way, while minding the diverse interests of national economies in Europe and the single market issue, the internal rules of competitiveness, the idea that you cannot have major monopolistic companies like that, let's say Alstom and Siemens were banned from merging in order to preserve competition policy in Europe, but then again you're creating global problem for Europe because it doesn't have a global player in that field that can
to go.
Okay, go.
Very sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for understanding.
You have permission.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's going to be very different. I'll just wait for a minute.
Sorry.
Okay, vidimo se. So managing the transatlantic drift of the United States that is going to come even after Trump is no longer in the White House, because he's not just the Trump effect. There are fundamental reasons for his behavior and for American policy choices right now. Managing China as an economic partner in a sense, especially in a normative way, trying to put things back in the World Trade Organization, trying to establish some rules of engagement, is going to be a very difficult task for the next Commission. Now, zooming down to our own level, I think that in Sibiu summit in early May, there was a draft agenda for the strategic agenda 2019-2024 for the next Commission, and it had 4 major topics. First one was the protecting citizens and values, and the first within that was protecting external borders of the EU. Now we in the Balkans see that Frontex as an agency has come here, it has dealt with Albania, it came to Serbia, and I think that we can expect the rise of cooperation between Serbia and Frontex. As one Albanian analyst said, that the Western Balkans countries are now part of the border control union. This is how we're not part of the European Union, but we're part of the border control union. This is sort of a fragmented integration that we are part of. We're not part of the institutions, we're not part of the politics, but we're part of the some elements of the common foreign and security politics, which is not what we kind of hoped for, but this is how things do stand at this moment. That draft agenda for next 5 years did not at all mention word enlargement. There was nothing about it at all, but per some news yesterday that I read, there is a sentence that's going to say, I'm going to quote it, EU agrees to keep the door open for those that are willing and able. So I think that knowing the bureaucratic logic, once words get on paper, they can hardly can drop off anytime. So we can imagine these words are going to be repeated quite often. So I think for us here, I think dominantly we have to ask ourselves, are we willing and are we able as a society, as an intellectual class to push our country further, minding all of these specific strategic issues and minding that the sort of low-level conflicts, which are economical, which are political, which are based on sanctions, luckily not on war, are going to be a part of political logic in Southern Eastern Europe, not saying Western Balkans, but Southeastern Europe. There is Turkey that is politically unstable or unreliable within NATO and for the EU as a partner. There is Israel. We now see a threat of war between US and Iran has rapidly risen in the last 48 hours. So this sort of fluctuating dynamics that is not very productive, that is not positive for what we as society need is economic development, stability, better demographic prospect than what we currently have is something to think of, and I'm not really sure that our political elites are contemplating in these terms, or that EU is going to be very, very positive towards us or going to move a few steps closer to us than it already has. And I think that our burden is going to be bigger in that sort of managing this relationship with EU, having in mind EU's own worries and strategic perspectives. That's kind of polemic, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ignutinovic. And the last but not the least, da sad možemo na srpskom, hvala Bogu. Da smo od početka.
Jel da nastavimo?
Evo samo jedna opaska, prešli smo na srpski trenutno kao radni jezik, budući imamo uslova. Nas razumeju naše drage komšije koje su postavile interesantna pitanja našim njemačkim partnerima.
Dobro su razbranili, bolje nego mi sami sebe.
Uglavnom imaš dovoljno vremena da izložiš i odmah ćemo da nastavimo završnu diskusiju, da ne bi pravili pauzu i ostalo je ljudi jako familijarna jedna atmosfera. Dakle, Marko, imaš dovoljno vremena i odmah posle Markovog izlaganja idemo u završnu diskusiju, ako nešto ima, sa srpskim radnim jezikom.
Ja bi ipak nastavio na engleskom.
Master Marko Jovanović.
Marko može, da.
Master, je li tako? Master Marko Jovanović.
Još uvek.
Tako je.
So, what I will speak about is one of the rising challenges the European Union is facing right now, the migration. So, this topic gained significance, especially since 2015 and so-called migration crisis, when large numbers of migrants and refugees from the predominantly Muslim countries in the Middle East, North Africa, and West Asia started heading to Europe in hope for a better future. This put the European Union to the test. Fundamental European values, such as those established in the Treaty of Lisbon and common interests and goals of EU, have shown their limitations as the nationalism, far right, and populism arose. This was confirmed in the last month's elections as well. These trends fueled migration debate in Europe, especially when it comes to Muslim immigrants. But this is a long-lasting question. It was during the economic reconstruction after the Second World War that large-scale immigration of Muslims to Western Europe started, as they were sought as low-paid guest workers. European states expected them to return to their homelands eventually when the need for their labor ceased to exist, but it didn't happen. The global economic recession that came after the Arab-Israeli war in 1973 and the oil boycott did make European countries stop importing workforce, but predominantly male laborers who chose to stay regardless of unfavorable economy were allowed to bring their families to join them in Europe.
It should be emphasized that these new economic conditions have directly increased resentment of immigrants, as they are no longer seen as a needed cheap labor, but as a competition in the unfriendly job market. That's where we should look for the historical roots of the current social cleavage between Muslim immigrants and native Europeans. In the same time, Muslims became more visible in European societies than it was the case before. Same goes for their religious identity, particularly since the 80s. Frustrated by the hardship they faced in acquiring equal civil rights and finding employment, they started turning to religion in search for source of positive self-identification. This co-occurred with the rise of political Islam and increased awareness of the importance of religion in social lives of Muslims. The fear of Islam among native Europeans grew. So did instability in the Middle East. Iran-Iraq war, civil war in Lebanon, the Gulf War, and other conflicts led to heightened influx of newcomers from the region. In addition to that, since the last quarter of the 20th century, there is a worldwide movement of people from east to the west and from south to the north in search for higher education, better job opportunities, and political and religious freedoms. This led to a public expression of xenophobia and panic about the rate of immigration. For example, in 1993, the question was raised, can the Netherlands accommodate any more immigrants, especially Muslims? And that was more than 25 years ago. So what followed was a few isolated terrorist attacks, such as 1995 public transportation bombings in France, and that led to public awareness of the threat of Islamist terrorism. Of course, this further boosted fears of Islam among Europeans. It climaxed after 9/11, followed by 2004 Madrid train bombings and 2005 London attacks. The first decade of the 21st century brought nothing good to the Muslim world. Western intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan, often seen as unjust and neo-colonial, further enforced illiberal and radical movements. A spirit of hope that came with so-called Arab Spring soon ended in disappointment. What followed was thousands and thousands of immigrants heading to Europe. Research has shown that even prior to 2015, when the immigrant inflow peaked, many Europeans had their concerns about Muslims and Islam. For example, 2013 a Religions Monitor survey showed that 60% of Spanish and 45% of British population felt fear of Islam. In that context, it is no surprise that a study by the European Parliament Research Service has showed that the share of Muslims who perceive discrimination on the grounds of religion or belief has increased from 12% in 2010 to 25% in 2016. When it comes to the job market, these figures are even higher, as a 2017 report showed that almost a third of Muslims report experiences of discrimination in the area of employment. And when it comes to women wearing headscarves, that number rises to 40%. But Europeans aren't the only ones who have negative attitudes toward the other party. Many Muslims have negative feelings toward West and Western culture. They see themselves as victims of Western hegemony and therefore hang tightly to Islamic culture, traditions, and norms as a means to saving them from total disintegration. This sometimes goes that far that they refuse to accept common European values and attempt to integrate with, which leads to ghettoization. Instead, they strive to live in Europe in accordance with Islamic values that, depending on the interpretation, can be incompatible with the life in the West, especially since the negative attitude towards pluralism limits in a civilization world the scopes of Islamic tolerance. It should be stressed that not all Muslims follow this kind of interpretations, quite opposite. Nevertheless, it is often portrayed as so, especially by those who tend to exploit the situation, such as nowadays more and more vocal populists. They tend to gain support of the masses by channeling public's general dissatisfaction with social, economical, political and other conditions or frustrations with personal status towards groups and individuals who not only don't bear responsibility for the situation in question, but are actually facing the same unfavorable conditions as a majority of people. A large influx of migrants and refugees from the Muslim majority countries in recent years made the Muslim immigrants both newcomers and those who have already settled in Europe before, some of them even 2 or 3 generations ago, an ideal enemies, so they are often accused of being bloodthirsty terrorists, a threat to the national identity, a burden for the state budget because they drain money from public funds, and so on. In addition to intolerant and even inflammatory political and media discourse, many Muslim immigrants belong to precarious labor force. They work in the black or gray economies, have short-term and part-time jobs or so-called 3D jobs, demanding, dirty, and dangerous, and therefore their future prospects seem very unpredictable and uncertain. In these highly insecure and unsteady conditions, they struggle to achieve financial and psychological well-being. Unstable social psychological atmosphere makes them easy to manipulate. Therefore, some of them see a way out of this situation in embracing radical Islamist teachings that include exclusivist and elitist ideas that give back self-confidence and the feeling of superiority to those who before considered themselves inferior or on many levels. In this context, it is interesting to mention here a notion of a French Islamologist, François Burgat, who suggests that when looking for the main incentive that turns people towards radical Islamism, we should look for the causes of this phenomenon in a social-political context in which this trend occurs. Islam becomes reality only with its social expression through human mediation, and thus roots of radical Islamism lie deeply rooted in the political grounds. Current situation in Europe certainly seems as a fertile ground for such occurrences. This is further supported with Islamist dogmatic reductionism and simplification, which makes these teachings more acceptable, especially to those with less religious education. One represented as a radical alternative to everything that's wrong and unjust, not only in their communities but in the world in general, radical Islamism becomes even more appealing. This is the most evident in places where the intercivilizational frictions are more intense. For that reason, research showed, for example, that Islamic State had higher support among Arabic-speaking social media users in countries such as Belgium, UK, and France than was the case in Syria, Iraq, and even Saudi Arabia. So what are the future prospects for Muslim immigrants in Europe? If populist parties who had a fair share of success in the last month's elections keep their current anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant inflammatory rhetoric and continue boosting discrimination, the existing social cleavages can only get deeper and push more Muslims in Europe towards radicalism. To prevent that from happening, it should be, of course, with neither generalization, commonly acknowledged that both Muslim immigrants and native European population act negatively toward one another in a self-perpetuating vicious circle. Muslim refusal to integrate into the European society and to accept the values the EU was built upon is fed by anti-Muslim European attitudes and many cases of discrimination, and vice versa. So I will conclude with stating that European Muslims must address their own responsibility for the failures of integration, and Europeans must acknowledge the anti-Muslim sentiments and at the root of their antagonism. Only with both parties doing so can we hope for current negative trends to stop. Thank you.
Mislim da sada prelazimo na završnu raspravu.
Prelazimo na završnu raspravu na srpskom jeziku. Ja bi je otvorio da ne pravimo pauzu, kao što smo rekli, budući da smo ostali u nekom tu familijarnom izdanju, manje više se svi znamo i sarađujemo. I ja bih za početak završne rasprave samo svima postavio pitanje, pogotovo kolegi Boštijanu, kome je to i ekspertiza i profesura i sve, ali i svima ostalima. Kako vidite Evropsku uniju i Balkan? Naravno, da li kao ove zemlje koje nisu članice, da možda postanu članice za 10 godina. Kako vidite Evropsku uniju, faktički situaciju u njoj, da li možete ono što se zove foresight i što je zapravo glavna svrha ove naše konferencije i što bi bili neki zaključci, dakle, kolega Boštjan, pa nadalje ko nađe za shodno. Kako vidite Evropsku uniju i ovaj region 2030. u ekonomskim, strateškim i političkim referencama?
Hvala na besedi. Da sam malo ciničan danas po izlaganju kolega iz CDU-a, ja ne vidim više. To je sad malo...
Koga izlaganju kolege?
Kolege iz CDU-a. Mene je to zabrinilo. Ja imam veliki problem po tom što sam danas slušao. Pošto ja sam mislio da, dobro, jasno mi je bilo da je to neki stav Europske unije, da nema nerešenih graničnih pitanja, pa gore dole, pa će to tako, pa onako. Onda danas je bilo to malo pretpostavljeno na to malo drugčiji način, kao to je što Juncker kazao, to je Juncker kazao, ne znam, prošle godine, ali znate, Balkan je malo pruži neke izazove. Nije problematično, ali pruži neke izazove. I to je ono što Brisel ne razumije. Ono što je relevantno za Brisel, oni će da pogledaju i kaže to tačka, ako nema tačke, nema članstva Zapadnog Balkana. Mi imamo na Zapadnom Balkanu puno otvorenih pitanja koje ne možemo sami da riješimo, trebamo nekog treći da nam pomogne, ali ta treći, kako se sad kaže, nije to Europska unija. I to je što je za mene ono što me brini ovdje, što mi diže jednu brigu, da je Europska unija...
Ko bi bio taj treći, izvinite na podpitanje, ako nije Europska unija?
Ne znam ko bi bio, ali kaže se da su to... Da, ali kaže da to može biti Sjedinjene države Amerike, kako smo vidjeli na makedonsko-grčki prespanskom sporazumu. Tako da, ali to mene zabrinjava, pošto ako dođu ponovno Sjedinjene Američke države na Balkan, onda imamo onu Europsku uniju i nemamo više na Balkanu. Onda se Europska unija zatvorila tamo negdje okoli Slovenije, tamo negdje se zatvorila i to je to. Imamo onu staru Europu, ne znamo šta će biti sa ovom novom Europu koja je došla u Europsku uniju 2004. Tako da mene zabrinjava da nije to što je bilo prošle godine u Sofiji, da nije to bilo iskreno. Da smo mi samo nismo nešto kazali, 2025. neko će ući iz Balkana, tako da damo još malo, to je carrot i stick i to tako malo, da to napravimo neko ravnoteže, ali to nije dobro. To nije dobro za region, to nije dobro za suradnju. I ono što sam kazao, što je kazala koleginica Janja ujutro, ta public awareness, to je vrlo relevantno. Više vremena nego ljudi čekaju da uđu u Europsku uniju. Niže je ta odstotak ljudi koji žele da uđu u Europsku uniju. Onda može da Europska unija 2030. reče, sad ste si spremni. A u Srbiji ćete imati, ne znam, 15% ljudi koji će kaže, ja sad idem u Europsku uniju, pošto ako nas nisu uzeli 2020. onda mi nećemo sad 2030. Onda uvijek je to neki cross-check između, kako kažem, ponude i pitanja u ekonomiji. Onda trebaš imaš neki cross-check. Ako nemaš ovih public awareness, imaš problem u zemlji i možda se dogodi, ne znam, 2030. je, nadam se da se ne dogodi, ali možda će se dogodi da pride do stava da imamo zemlje Balkane koje bi bile spremne da uđu u Europsku uniju, a one nisu više povoljne da uđu u Europsku uniju. Pošto će imati strateške interese drugdje. Će biti možda da bude Kina tle u Srbiji, Crni Gori i možda i imamo sad Kinu u Trstu, u Italiji. Tako da može biti Kina glavni aktor ovdje, može da bude Rusija glavni aktor, može da bude Sjedinjene države Amerike kao su na Hrvatskom sad.
A izvinite, samo pitanje, evo kad ste rekli da nama treba na Balkanu misleći neko treći nam pomogne, to nije EU i onda ste vjerovatno mislili, eto mi smo tako protumačili, možda da će to biti Sjedinjene države, rekli ste da se onda EU negdje tamo prekida tako u Alpama, a ovo će onda biti ponovo utjecaj Sjedinjenih država, ali da li je to moguće kada sad vidimo da se Sjedinjene države povlače? za Trumpovu administraciju i da imamo neku novu vrstu, nećemo reći izolacionizma, ali ne više tolike intervencionalizma, jer se oni sada povlače. Da li mislite da će to zaista biti trend ukoliko, na primjer, i Trump dobije novi mandat? Da li će zaista Sjedinjene države, dakle, glavno pitanje je ko će da ispuni vakum, budući da smo se svi složili da se EU nije dovoljno aktivna ili možda će se povući. Sad glavno pitanje je ko će da ispuni taj vakum. Sada, da li vi mislite da će to zaista biti Amerika, obzirom na trendove njene politike, pogotovo Trumpovo biračko tijelo koje negde tamo u Južnoj Karolini želi da ima zakon protiv abortusa, a ne da budu prisutni na Balkanu?
Ja mislim da će biti ovdje neki kompromis između Kine i Amerike i svi će malo podijeliti zemlje, malo Amerika, malo Kina, ti uzmi to, oni uzmu ono i svi smo sad...
Da li mislite da će to biti jako bitna teza, mislim možda nešto od najbitnijih stvari koje smo čuli danas, da li će taj kompromis biti peaceful, da li će biti negotiation, da li će ga pregovarati i sve, budući a Kinezi nisu baš poznati kao, na primjer, Rusi da dođu, da vole da stave čizmu, da zavrnu nekom ruku, da li mislite da će to biti džentlmenski dogovor o Balkanu između US i Kine?
To će biti džentlmenski dogovor, neće biti rata.
Eto.
A to je moj stav, to nije, ne znam, ja nemamo one kristalne kugle.
Nova jaltska formula.
To je neka nova jaltska formula, da, tada smo podijelili Jugoslaviju na dvoje, zapadno i istočno, a sada podijelimo Balkan ponovno na dvoje. Imamo Europski Balkan i Istočni Balkan koji je malo kineski i malo od Sjedinjenih država Amerika.
Kolega Udoviću bili napisali tekst o tome za zbornik, mislim da bi bio apsolutni hit i da bi bili veoma citirani, ne samo u Srbiji, nego all around the region za zbornik koji priređujemo.
Može.
Divno. Hvala vam mnogo na ovim vrlo ovako, ne samo interesantnim, nego informativnim odgovorima. Idemo dalje, ja bih sad pitao kolegu ko predsjedavajući. Kad je već slovenački blok.
Dame imaju prednost.
U delegaciji, naravno.
Pa da nastavimo. Znate šta, ja se ne slažem potpuno. Moglo bi to da se desi, naravno. Što Boštjan kaže, mi se obično slažemo oko većine pitanja, ali ponekad i ne. Ja se ipak nadam, ja sam onaj večiti optimista da će možda Evropska unija ipak da se sredi. Jer ako se ne sredi, to sam ja danas prepodne rekla, ona će propasti. Neće propasti samo zbog Zapadnog Balkana, ali će propasti zbog toga jer je nesposobna da rešava pitanja. Jer ponavljam, pošto sam već starija i pamtim situaciju kad sam pre 30 godina živjela u Beogradu kao izveštač slovenačkih medija, kao novinar, i kad sam rekla mojim prijateljima u Beogradu i mojim prijateljima u Ljubljani, bit će rata, svi su me gledali kao da sam luda. I desio se rat za pola godine. Može opet da se ponovi ovde na tim prostorima rat.
Između koga, izvinite?
Pitaj Boga. Može između Srbije i Kosova. Može da ispadne unutar Bosne i Hercegovine. Može, znate, ona ideja o zameni teritorija između Srbije i Kosova. Ja sam pisala za nas jednu analizu na tu temu. Mnogi su bili u Sloveniji oduševljeni tom varijantom. Pa time bi rešili. Jeste, time bi rešili za Srbiju i za Kosovo. Ali bi otvorili pitanje za čitav Zapadni Balkan, gde bi se otvorilo pitanje Makedonije, gde bi se otvorilo pitanje Bosne i Hercegovine. Šta će biti? Jel će Republika Srpska sad konačno da se pridruži Srbiji? Da li će Hrvati reći, pa evo, braća Hrvati su nam ovde, ajmo bolje u Hrvatsku, i tako dalje, i tako dalje. Ovi prostori nikad nisu bili jednostavni. I svi koji smo živjeli u Jugoslaviji to dobro znamo. I treba biti veoma koncizan. Ovaj dečko, ovaj je predstavnik nemačke stranke i omladine jedne nemačke stranke. On još i ne zna šta je bitno. Ja se nadam da to nije stav CDU-a. Ja se iskreno nadam da nije stav CDU-a, jer on ovde danas nije izrekao ni jednu prijateljsku stvar prema Srbiji.
Pa, hvala vam, Janjo, na ovoj intervenciji. intervenciji, pre nego što dam dalje reč, samo bih rekao da smo ako i u razgovoru nekom došli do zaključka da je zapravo Timan Kuban zastupnik jednog konzervativnog ili ultrakonzervativnog krila, on čak misli da ova gospođa koja je trenutno predložena da bude zamjenica Angele Merkel ne kontroliše partiju i da će prije ili kasnije doći onako pravi neki rasni konzervativac, ne znam, iz neke njemačke pokrajine. Ovo što ste rekli za ovo Boštjana, ovo što se meni jako dopalo, ja sam shvatio Boštjana da je on zapravo mislio da Evropska unija neće sada da se destabilizuje raste, nego samo da će da se sažme, da se skupi jer nema kapacitet da bi očuvala ovo naprosto što ima i to je ta čuvena priča o Evropi u više brzina ili o tvrdom jezgru i onda koncentričnim krugovima, a meni se svidjela ova ideja da se Amerika i Kina nekako peaceful tu kao dogovore, evo vama ove luke, nama pruge i sve, a ja bih sad dao kolegi Grutinoviću.
A jel smem samo pre nego što date, a šta će biti sa Rusima? Mislite da će Rusi sa zadovoljstvom gledati taj dogovor između Kine i Amerike?
Govoreći strateški, mislim, eto, volio bih da čujem različita mišljenja, zapravo Kinezi koriste Ruse kao telohranitelje novog puta svila. Rusi su tu zapravo njihovi neki telohranitelji koji obavljaju tu neku funkciju, ali sami Rusi znaju u ekonomskim terminima, neko je rekao koliko je ko težak, a sve je ekonomija. Dakle, ovo više nije, kako bi se reklo, 46. i 7. i tako dalje, već osvaja onaj koji može da osvoji tržište. I tu su Rusi, osim gasne energije, možda sad pitanje i Grutin najpre može, pa onda Bošnjan, da li bi Rusi mogli biti dio tog aranžmana u smislu energetike, pa da imamo neki, što bi rekao Kissinger, balance of power, ravnotežu snaga na Balkanu.
Mi ga sad faktički imamo, koji je neizrečen i koji nije dogovoren, ali su se moći sudarile, to sudara nije bilo ništa, nije bio eksplozivan, ali on faktički postoji na terenu. Ne postoji velika sila koja ima više otvorena vrata kod srpskih vlasti nego što danas Kina. To Rusija apsolutno nije. Rusija nije izvor novca, Rusija nije izvor novca, postoji politički bagaž koji vuče zbog sankcija i prosto dobijate neki šamar verbalni od Europske unije kad god nešto s Rusima radite. Sa Kinezima to nije slučaj. Nivo kontakta Xi Jinpinga, Aleksandra Vučića, ja ne kažem da to nužno loše, prosto konstatujem stvar. Nivo do koga mogu kineski investitori dođu od srpskih vlasti, nivo do kojih neki srpski političari mogu da odu do Kine, da im se otvore vrata, da sarađuju, apsolutno ne postoji ni sa jednom ni drugom državom, uključujem tu i Nemačku. To je možda neka paralela, ali to je taj nivo. To je doduše vezano za ovu strukturu na vlasti, ajde kažem, još uvijek smo neka demokratija, stvari se menjaju, vjerojatno ne skoro, ali to bih vezao pre za neku partijsku politiku i strukturnost, nego što je to neka dubinska stvar srpske kulture ili srpske tradicije, prosto nije. Srđan Majstorović nije tu, CEP njegov je radio istraživanje prošle godine oko, kao segment jednog šireg istraživanja utjecaja Kine, Kina plus 17 ovaj mehanizam. Ja sam bio senior researcher na tom projektu jedno 6-7 meseci. Kineski utjecaj u suštini jeste svodiv na ekonomiju. Njihovi ambasadori su u suštini jako pažljivi šta pričaju, sem što nemaju kontakta na Kosovu mnogo i prosto se ne bave temom Kosova, verbalno podržavaju Srbiju, ali verbalno podržavaju i put Srbiju Europsku uniju. Oni nisu politički remetilački faktor kontra Europske unije ovde, zato što pod A, suviše smo daleko i suviše nismo bitan element, pod dva, mi smo deo njihove politike prema Evropi i dok god je ta politika još uvijek politički prijateljska, oni će gledati da imaju deal sa Briselom, sa Berlinom, sa nekog predstavnica, a taj pozitivan ton će se na kraju preneti i ovde, oni prosto neće remetiti, ali će gledati da svoje ekonomske interese ostvare izvozom kapitala, izvozom ekspertize oko tehnikalija, oko infrastrukture, mostovi, železnica, autoputevi, energetika, sad već šta sve kod nas rade. Dakle, nisu nužno taj kompletan politički činilac koji bi mogao na politički način da drži Balkan. Mi smo imali neke izjave iz vrha naše vlasti da su oni velika sila, da su tu igrači, da su maltene preferabilni partner u mnogo čemu, zato što oni ne traže od vas ništa, tu nemate uslovljavanje, vi s njima pregovarate relativno tvrdo oko ekonomskih stvari, možete da ubacite neke svoje firme da rade. Ja sam sa inženjerima našim građevinskim bolje razgovor u sklopu tog projekta koji su bolje pričali o saradnji s Kinezima, zato što znate na čemu ste, nego sa EBRD-em, koji vam da takve uslove da nijedna velika srpska firma ne može da uopšte dobije kredit. I onda dođe Štrabak iz Austrije ili austrijski por koji im pokupi posao, vama građevinska operativa ovde umire. I to je tako iskustvo 15. godine. I to postoji, u tom inženjerskom korpusu postoji jedan otpor prema evropskom finansiranju zbog tih strogih uslova koje mi nikad nismo uspeli da postignemo da bismo nadgradili svoju operativu. ali Rusija i Kina su hladnjikavi partneri na Balkanu. Mi smo imali slučaj sa RTB-om Bor, gde se ruska kompanija žalila na odluku da Ziđin dobije, da Ziđin kupi, tvrdeći da je njihova ponuda bila bolja. Ja ne znam političku pozadinu te žalbe, da li je ona utemeljena, da li, mislim, ekonomsku pravno, prvo, da li je utemeljena i političku, da li ona ima podršku ruske ambasade, ruskih vlasti. Nisam preterano siguran, to je neka kiparsko-kanadska, ako kažem kiparska, u suštini su to ruske pare. Oni nemaju sinergetski efekt na Balkanu. Rusija nije deo Belt and Roada, u suštini nije. Oni imaju povećan nivo transportnih, voznog transporta preko Rusije, ali ne postoje velike investicije Kine u Rusiji. To se prosto nije ostvarilo. Kineske banke su jako zainteresovane da ne dođu pod američke sankcije zbog toga što sarađuju sa velikim ruskim državnim kompanijama. I pored vojne saradnje, pored vojnih licenci koje Rusija njima daje, pored saradnje u gasu i nafti, oni ne ostvaruju tu punu nekakvu savezničku saradnju, pogotovo na političkom nivou i na tom ekonomskom delu kineskih investicija i vezivanja ekonomskih. Prosto Rusi čak i ne žele da budu vezani za Kinu, znaju da su tu potpuno dramatični inferiorni partner. Dakle, njihov sinergetski efekt na Balkanu pogotovo ne treba posebno očekivati. Meni se čini da iskustvo Brexita je zapravo dovelo toga da tema bilo čijeg egzita iz Europske unije posto nije bila tema na europskim izborima uopšte. Bilo je nekoliko partija koje se zalagalo poput Foruma za demokratiju u Holandiji, oni su rekli pa mi bismo možda vidjeli referendum neki, ali su apsolutno tu poruku gurnuli sa strane. I meni se čini da Europska unija će imati možda blago jačanje svojih internih kapaciteta u narednih 5 godina. To će biti mučno, ja se pribojavam da recimo francusko-nemački motor koji bi kao trebao da bude u Europskoj uniji prosto ne funkcioniše kako treba i da neće funkcionisati pod Angelom Merkel i Emmanuelom Macronom, oni su na različnim frekvencijama funkcionišu i prosto se neće te dve zemlje sporazumeti oko fundamentalnih reformi naredne 2-3 godine. Ali zapravo očekujem stabilizaciju stanja odnosno na zadnjih 5 godina kada je bilo i sukob u Ukrajini, i migrantska kriza i vrlo živi efekti ekonomske krize koja, sad neki govore da će se možda ponoviti, ali to ajde da ne uzimamo za ozbiljno, uplatili bismo se na neku sportsku prognozu kada bismo to znali. Tako da mislim da će zapravo vakuum na Balkanu će delimično ispuniti balkanske zemlje. Ovo su još uvek i mlade zemlje bez puno iskustva navikle da su pod tutorstvom velikih zemalja, ali s nekakvim protokom vremena sa ovim multilateralnim samitima, sa formulom Zapadnog Balkana, stiče se iskustvo međusobne kakve takve saradnje, jasnija predstava šta su interesi raznih društva za raznih zemalja, konfliktni potencijal postoji, nije preterano verovatan, na Kosovo je možda moguć, oko severa Kosova, oko onih, kažem, to znači na spornih tačaka, verovatnije kao uvertira u konačno rešenje koje bi bilo nekako nametnuto na terenu silom i hajde da to završimo na neki način. To mi je zamisli scenario, ostalo ne preterano. Tako da ja mislim da će zapravo Europska unija za 2, 3, 5 godina biti jači akter na Balkanu nego što je to bila zadnjih nekoliko godina. Da li će ona imati formulisanu politiku u pozitivnom smislu proširenja, odnosno accessiona našeg tamo, to je veliko pitanje, zato što je to otišlo u one vode demokratije i javne politike gde su građani njihovi u mnogim bitnim zemljama stekli negativnu percepciju o tome, iako naravno se time ne bave, ne čitaju o tome, imaju jednu izgrađen negativni stav. Zato što su evropski političari potpuno podbacili u tome da to ili profilišu na jedan pozitivan način, a uglavnom su svi predstavljeni kao tamo neka balkanska sirotinja koja eto, samo hoće da uzme deo našeg kolača i ništa drugo, bez ikakve vrednosti. Prošle godine bio Janis Emanuelidis, koji je jedan direktora European Policy Centra ovde, i baš smo se doticali da li postoji mogućnosti Srbije ili Zapadnog Balkana da na jedan produktivan i pozitivan način lobiraju ne prema Briselu, jer taj kontakt već postoji, nego prema Berlinu, prema Parizu, prema Holandiji, prema nekoliko zemalja koje su možda ključne. Francuska i Holandija su ključni blokatori trenutnih procesa pridruženja. Da se predstavimo boljem svetlu i koje su to teme koje mi kažemo, ovo su naši doprinosi potencijalno u Europskoj uniji, odmah čovjek gleda na 30 sekundi i rekao, ja ne znam šta bi to mogu da bude. Znači, ne postoji ta kreativnost. To je naša muka i to je verovatno zadatak za nas da mi nađemo neka rešenja, a da nisu bodljikavačice na granici i mlaćenje migranta kako bi se dodvorili Budimpešti ili ne znam već kome, i da nisu neke, da kažem, baš nehumane stvari koje su možda neko popularne, ali nadam se...
Naprimjer, for example, koje su te stvari? Da se eksplicira, eto, tu nema novinara.
Mislite kao pozitivne?
te nehumane stvari.
A ne, mislio sam da prosto na kažem, mađarsku verziju politike prema migrantima, da nije politika žica, da se ne svedemo na saradnju s Europskom unijom u domenu njihove zajedničke spoljne bezbednosne politike, jer mi zapravo polako otklizavamo od toga da smo zemlje koje treba se pridružiti, ka tome smo zemlje koje su objekti spoljne politike. I kolega Jan Zalbanić napisao jučer prekjučer tekst, lepo rekao, border control union. To nam se smeši kao kratkoročna ili srednjoročna opcija da se prosto bavimo zaštitom granica Europske unije, da to bude naša utilitarna funkcija za njih. To je zanimljivo, to je za Europsku uniju bitno, nama je to jako neproduktivno. Osim ako ne možemo da izvučemo neke koncesije i svega toga, ili povećane investicije, ili da se nekako dodvorimo, u šta nisam preterano ubeđen, ali kažem, to je negativan kolosek, negativan za filozofiju proširenja Europske unije, negativan kao za model integracije koji je do sada kako tako radio, negativan po našem shvatanju nas samih. Ispadamo kao da smo krajina evropski, mislim u onom istorijskom smislu kao da smo krajiški predeo Europske unije i da to ostajemo...
Kako sad nismo bili
Pa bili smo austro-ugarski, ali nekako se nada da smo to ostavili jedno 100 godina iza sebe. Valjda smo u 21. veku nekako smo nadam se da se prevazišli. Tako da neću da više oduzimam vreme.
Ali Bošnjan je tražio intervenciju na ovo, ja bih ga samo pitao kad je već tražio intervenciju, kako on vidi ulogu Rusije koju nismo uključili ovaj mogući deal Amerike i Kine na Balkanu, kako ide ulogu Rusije na Balkanu u tom velikom dealu i uopšte ulogu Rusije sa ostalim velikim geopolitičkim celinama kao što je Evropa, Evropska unija, Amerika i Kina.
Samo nešto što je vrlo relevantno. Mi možemo da pričamo o Europskoj uniji, o Njemačkoj i o, ne znam, proširenju i čime hoćemo, ako imamo neko viziju što se će dogoditi. Ali sad imate vi unutrašnje probleme u Njemačkoj. Ne znamo je li imamo koaliciju za mjesec dana ili nemamo više koaliciju.
Zelena partija je najjača partija po anketama. Jača od CDU-a.
To, ali Zelena partija nije za proširenje. CDU je za proširenje, pa socijaldemokrati su za proširenje. Zelena partija sad koja nije više ona Joška Fiša Zelena partija, sad je malo konzervativnija.
Nije ni SDP, nije ni AFD.
Onda mi imamo problem, ako nimate na Francuskoj, nemate onega koje podrži proširenje, ako nemate i u Njemačkoj, nemate ništa. Onda Brisel neće uraditi ništa. I to je to što sam ja kazao prije, da je problem je treba imati viziju ako želimo nešto. I zato ako ne želimo ništa, onda postavimo tamo granicu na Hrvatskoj, tamo i onda imamo vakum ovdje. Ko dođe sad? Ko je prvi? First come, first serve. Ko je prvi sada na Balkanu? Kina. Oni su prvi. Amerikanci su na jugu Balkana prvi, Kina je u Srbiji prva i sad...
Izvini Bošnjan, da li računaš kad kažeš Amerikanci čitav anglosaksonski blok u smislu Velike Britanije, pošto postoje teze u dijelu naših kolega eksperata da će nakon Brexita, koji sad još možemo tvrditi da će se desiti nakon onog rezultata na evropskim izborima Faraža, da će Britanija postati prisutnija na Balkanu, odnosno da će se vratiti kao neka vrsta neevropske sile koja će kao Amerika i Kina biti takmaci i pokušati da istisne Brisel.
Ne, pošto Amerika nikad nije smatrala Veliku Britaniju kao equal partnera. To je neki dečak tamo. Oni to ne stvaraju ozbiljno. Tako da ne, Amerika će biti Amerika i pratiti američke interese. I to Velika Britanija može da ima neke one marginalne priče, ali to nije...
Ali očekuješ jače prisustvo Britanije na Balkanu i raspodelu ovog vakuma i njihovu ulogu raspodeli tog vakuma?
Ne, ja mislim da ima Velika Britanija situaciju koju ima Rusija, ali Rusija je u boljoj situaciji na Balkanu nego Velika Britanija.
Zašto?
Ali to je zašto imate one historičke veze sa Rusijom, zašto imate neku tradiciju koja je zajamna, zašto imate sve to što s Velikom Britanijom imate. Imate s Francuskom, ali nemate s Velikom Britanijom. Tako da, to su vremena koja su prošla. To su vremena i ne možeš ti 70 godina poslije ponovno vratiti vremena koja su prošla. Tako da mislim Velika Britanija neće imati jaku priču na Balkanu, ali kad ste me pitali o Rusiji, Rusija ima nekakav utjecaj, ali taj je vrlo marginalan. To je, zavisi kao rekao kolega Milan, to je bilo na onoj razini kulture, tradicije, religije, možda još nešto, ali nije to danas što se prati i kako se danas usvaja zemlja. To je kapital, to je novac. To nije više ona tradicija, kultura, mi smo svi zajedno, kako smo mi kazali, bilo u Jugoslaviji, kad su Crnogorci kazali nas i Rusa ima 300 miliona. Nije to više tako. Mi bi uvijek bili centralna Europa, ali nismo.
Više Crnogorci s Rusijom. su Amerikanci.
Ali to je glavni problem. Rusija je malo izgubila, ali druga stvar koja je vrlo relevantna. Ako Amerika i Kina dođu ovamo, onda Rusija dobije Ukrajinu, a Ukrajina je vrlo relevantna za Rusiju, mnogo više nego Srbija. I to je ona geopolitika koja se stavlja.
Da, globalni geopolitički deal u tom smislu. Evo vama Ukrajina, vaš neighborhood, vaš neki stomak, tu nas pustite, jer smo mi tako treći prsten ruskog interesa, okruženi Rumunijom, Bugarskom, etc.
Postoji jedna kratka teza koja zapravo kaže, ajde da Crnim morem ide naravno linija sad sukoba između ovoga, da je Balkan kvazi džentlmenski sporazum koji se natuca po novinama kako gde, da je Kavkaz zapravo prepušten također Rusiji, jer je suviše daleko za Amerikanci u ovom trenutku prosto nemoguće projektovati tvrdu moć tamo. Kavkaz prepušten Rusima ne da ga okupiraju, ne znam, nego prosto da drže političku kontrolu, a da je Balkan u suštini prepušten Amerikancima i da je ostalo Ukrajina, Crno more, Azovsko more, Krim kao linija sukoba, da se dakle Rusija neće pretjerano mešati na Balkan, osim mislim.
Od koga poteče, izvini, ta teza? Chatham House pravila su nam tu.
Od 4-5 tekstova prošle godine oni susreti Aleksandra Surkova sa Viktorijom Nuland dok je još bila...
Od Ukrajine, što su se sastavljali.
Ali, znači, posle Trumpov dolazka na vlast, znači još u toku demonstracije koji zapravo nije u svim prepakao američku politiku koliko se to često misli, znači nekoliko tih susreta i prosto ponašanje i kavkazskih zemalja i odsustvo jasnije podrške bar zvanične Amerike nekakvim, gruzijski naporima se distancira od Rusije ili jermenskim ambicijama da bude malo bolje povezan sa Ruskom unijom. Dakle, jedno tiho zapuštanje Kavkaza i prepuštanje njega Rusiji uz kvazi zamenu za nemešanje u balkanske poslove.
Dobro, ali ajde da se vratimo na suštinu. Koliko poznajem ja zapadni svet, pravo da vam kažem, Sjedinjene Američke Države su lider, Evropska unija je podizvođač. Mislim, znači, podizvođač. Ne možete vi, ne mogu, ja sam živao u Francuskoj i Francuska, ako je kažete ne možeš da isporučiš brodove Rusiji koje si napravila u Dunkerku i uložila si ne znam koliko, desetina miliona evra, da, oni će da kažu dobro, mi nećemo isporučiti brodove. To je realnost. Ako neko kaže Angeli Merkel vodi računa o gasovodu, smeta nam, ona neće to raditi. Znači, morate da imate u vidu, Sjedinjene Američke Države su lider, Evropska unija je podizvođač. Šta su radile Sjedinjene Američke Države? Sjedinjene Američke Države su pobedile u hladnom ratu. Njima je u interesu da ovaj deo sveta integrišu u svoj sistem, sigurno. Imaju jedan problem, a to je problem što Srbija ne može da, odnosno oni su izašli sa jednim konceptom. Taj koncept je nezavisno Kosovo. Oni su sa tim izašli. I oni su pokušavali da kroz neku raspravu u srpskom društvu afirmišu ideju da bi Srbiji trebali da shvate da je Kosovo izgubljena stvar. I znači da mi kroz neki unutrašnji dijalog ovde shvatimo da smo mi izgubili Kosovo i da je to za nas završena priča. Taj unutrašnji dijalog u Srbiji ne uspeva iz jednog prostog razloga što svaki narod ima neke mitske, da tako kažem, spomenike kulture. Ja sam se iznenadio kad sam vidio u Parizu koliko su ljudi potrešeni time što govori jedan deo Notre Dama. Pa oni imaju pare, obnovit će ga, ništa strašno. Ali oni su bili užasno svi potrešeni jer je to deo njihove... Da, i mi smo im pomogli i tako dalje. Da, i to je sve u redu. Međutim, oni su... Srpski narod ima mit Kosova i nijedan političar ovde ne sme da kaže ja ću... Mislim, može da kaže onda je završio političku karijeru. Može da kaže ja ću dati Kosovo, sve priznaću ga i nema problema. Poslednje što je na stolu, kada bi mi rešili problem Kosova u smislu tom, mi bi lakše ušli u Evropsku uniju, brže bi to išlo. U geostrateškom smislu, vi ste videli da Rumunija i Bugarska su ušli u Evropsku uniju onog trenutka kada su Sjedinjene Američke Države iz geostrateških razloga rekla Evropi pa nama trebaju Rumunija i Bugarska, ajde završiti taj posao. Prema tome, šta je ovde problem? Tu ima dva koncepta tog rešenja i zato je bitno što je bio gospodin Kuban ovde.
Da
čujemo iz prve ruke.
Zato sam napravio aranžman da ga
Prvi koncept jeste da praktično postoji jedna ideja da se kao onaj Camp David, znači da se u Vašingtonu potpiše sporazum gde bi Srbija zvanično uz veliku pompu priznala Kosovo. To je jedna varijanta. Onda bi ceo svet vidio da smo mi priznali Kosovo i svi ovi koji su protiv priznanja Kosova, kad već su videli da Srbija zvanično priznaje Kosovo, oni bi priznali Kosovo. To je neka ideja koju guraju Albanci, to je neka ideja koja se gura u Evropskoj uniji, znači to je ona opasnost zašto sad srpska delegacija izbegava, plaši se tog Pariza 1. jula sastanka sa Macronom i Merkelovom, jer se boje da ne budu pritisnuti uza zid da moraju to da rade. Druga varijanta koju gura Srbija, koju pokušava da gura, naravno, bezuspešno, a to je da, za sada bezuspešno vidjet ćemo, to je da kažu, pa dobro, ajde, da bi mi lakše progutali tu pilulu gubitka Kosova, dajte nam nešto, dajte nam jedan deo, pa bit će nam lakše bit će predsjedniku Srbije lakše da kaže javnosti, evo, ovi pred mene su sve upropastili, a ja sam, evo, dobio jedan deo, nismo zadovoljni, sve u redu, sad idemo na izgradnju mira, Srbi su poznati kao pobednici u ratu, gubitnici u miru, znači ne umeju da konstruišu mir, sad će oni uz taj kompromis da ga iskonstruišu i da naprave nešto. Šta je problem? Evo, videli ste gospodina Kubana, Nemcima ne bada na pamet da Srbima prave ustupke, boje se da bi oni mogli da traže sutra Republiku Srpsku i da bi to bio...
A i Crna Gora.
A i Crna Gora. Jednostavno, Nemačka nikad nije imala nameru da vidi jaku Srbiju, ni Srbiju koja je jača ili koja širi uticaj na ovom prostoru. To je apsolutno u neskladu sa geostrateškim interesima Nemačke i to je on lepo rekao, dosta vam je, imate to što jeste, poraženi ste na svim stranama, priznajte poraz, završili ste priču i na Kosovu i Jugoslavija vam se raspala, ćao, doviđenja. Znači, to je njihov stav, priznajte to što jeste i gotovo. I evo, znači, to je sad geopolitičke igre. Kako Srbiju uključiti u zapadni svet? U kojim granicama?
Evo, dao si dobar pledoaje, da ćemo i mladim kolegama reći, ali moje pitanje je sledeće. Ako smo već tu imali prilike priče, neke teze, da će Amerika da poveća prisustvo na Balkanu, da se sklapaju, na primjer, neki globalni dilovi, da će Rusija biti namirena, Ukrajina, Kaukazu i tako dalje, i da će ovaj deo da pripadne Americi. Zapravo, to je teza Bošnjanova, dok kolega Ibrutinović ipak misli da će jačati kapacitet Evropske unije. Glavno pitanje, zašto bi Srbija uopšte pod takvim nekim okolnostima uopšte, neću reći težela, ali toliko insistirala na članstvu Evropskoj uniji, za Srbiji onda nisu najvažniji odnosi sa te dve velike supersile pod broj 1 Amerikom, da se uključi u zapadni svet. Ti si sam rekao faktički da je Evropska unija podizvođač Amerike. Izvini, mi svi znamo da Amerika drži trupe u Nemačkoj. Da drži, ona ima trupe. Nemačka nije u strateškom smislu suverena zemlja. Francuska je to malo više, ali također ograničena. Dakle, moje pitanje je sledeće. Ako je Evropska unija zaista podizvođač Sjedinjenih država, koji će tu da jačaju, sad imaju neki novi taj diplomatija na mišiće, zašto mi ne bi direktno, to je jedan moj kolega bivši iz parlamenta, kome su se podsmevali zbog te teze Dragan Čormas, koji je stalno govorio za Srbiju je najbitnije da ima kredibilne odnose poverenja sa Sjedinjenim državama, što onda direktno ne bi išla sa centrom tog zapadnog sveta, nego preko stanica, ne znam, Nemačka, Pariz, Macron i tako dalje.
A ne, i Srbija je pokušala, vi ste videli, mi sad pokušavamo da normiramo jedan deo Trumpove administracije, da kažemo, ajde malo promenite mišljenje, kad vi promenite mišljenje, lako ćete vi ubediti Nemci i Francuze da može da se adaptira granica i tako dalje. Znači, to je neki pokušaj koji Srbija sad pokušava da izlobira u toj Trumpovoj administraciji. Inače, srpski put na zapad prolazi kroz Evropsku uniju. Ne možete vi, znači, Evropska unija je jedan sistem koji je, ako znate dobro istoriju Evropske unije, svi očevi, osnivači Evropske unije su u stvari ljudi koji su jako bili vezani za Sjedinjene Američke Države. To je uopšte jedan američki projekat. Druga je stvar što je evropska ideja postoji dugi niz vekova, kao idealistička ideja o stvaranju neke vrste zajednice Federacije evropskih naroda, ali Sjedinjene Američke Države su ključno doprinele stvaranju Evropske unije. Dakle, put Srbije ka zapadu naravno prolazi preko Evropske unije i preko NATO-a. To je otprilike to. S tim što mi ne moramo možda da budemo članovi NATO-a, možemo da budemo u bliskim vezama kao što je Austrija, kao što je neka druga država koja nije formalno članica NATO-a, ali koja je vrlo vezana za njih.
Je li još neko? Evo, izvolite, iz Ministarstva spoljnih poslova.
Ali u svoje ime.
Ograđujete se, Tamara, dobro.
Moram. Jedno pitanje, pitanje, komentar. Znači, pričamo o Evropskoj uniji kao nekoj šestoj super sili, u potencijalu, u budućnosti, ako Evropska unija ima ideju, strategiju, želju, što god,
za početak, za to je treba vojska. Mislim da se svi slažemo, teško da će moći da igra neku ulogu ako nema neku sopstvenu silu. S druge strane, ona je već, kao što, mislim, je ekonomski jaka, s druge strane, što se tiče ljudskih vrednosti, humanizma
i renesansa.
Tako, je definitivno top. Mislim da se tu svi slažemo, naravno može bolje, ali tu smo negde vodeći mi, oni, kako god. Ali, moramo pričati i o razvoju tehnologije. Mislim da tu itekako zaostajemo. Posebno zaostajemo u odnosu na Kinu. Znači, šta je Kinu radilo u posljednjih 10 godina, mislim...
Znači, ko je jedno 5G zubaciti za godinu dana?
Eno, Španija je zaključila ugovor oko 5G.
Mislim da Evropa, ako hoće ozbiljniji da bude igrač na sceni, mora da počne mnogo više da ulaže i u bezbednost i u tehnologije, u svoju tehnologiju, u svoju bezbednost. Mislim, to je zaista osnova, mislim da je to jasno i nekoj koji do sreća.
Ali pazite, izvinite, koju bezbednost mi smo imali slučaj pre par godina kad je CIA zavrbovala nekog agenta BND-a to za neke male pare, par hiljada eura. Otprilike na srpskom nivou da neko radi za nekoga za to. Znači, zamislite vi, Nemci, onda imate ono čujeno pismo nemačkog jednog generala pre par godina koji je rekao, ljudi, mi nemamo vojsku, tu nama ništa ne funkcioniše. Znači, Evropa je u tom security smislu bukvalno patulja. Pogotovo nakon odlaska Velike Britanije i ona je prepuštena, htela, ne htela. Zato meni je ovo pitanje, jeste geografski, naravno, Evropa nam je tu najbliža, to je taj zapad koji nam je najbliži i tako dalje. Međutim, i tu se slažem da naši sad pokušavaju nešto, eto, sa Amerikom, sa ovom novom Trumpovom administracijom. U suštini, te dve sile, evo, nekako mi se to nameće kao jedan mali zaključak s kojima mi zapravo treba budemo dobri, koji će deliti svet u 21. veku su zapravo Sjedinjene države.
Da, ali ja se izvinjam, ako Amerikanci dođu ovde i ponovno izigravaju velikog pregovarača koji stvari zaveće ruke i dozvoljava, mislim, da se stvari odigraju tako kako se odigraju u raspodeli između Kosova, između Bosne i Hercegovine i tako dalje, Evropa je onda izgubila kredibilitet u potpunosti. O čemu onda da pričamo? Mislim, zašto onda idemo u Evropsku uniju ako oni ne umiju da reše ni jedan jedini problem? Neće da se bave bezbednosti, neće da se bave razvojem tehnologije, neće da se bave, mislim, čim se da bave.
Nećemo vas reći ministarstvo da se zastupali stavaju protivne trgovne.
Ideološki Evropska unija je fantastična, mislim...
Evo, Gordana Gasmi, izvinite da damo reč.
Ovo je jedan kontrapunkt, u stvari, ja sam htela nevezano od Tamarine intervencije da se zapitamo svi. Mi smo čitavo vreme od jutros govorili o Evropskoj uniji kao jednom uniku, ali u suštini složili smo se da nema jedinstva. I mi u stvari danas i ne možemo da govorimo o Evropskoj uniji kao celini, jer znamo da ne postoji jedinstvena spoljna politika, čak i na ovom pitanju Kosova, između ovih 4-5 zemalja koje nisu priznale nezavisnost, a i nevezano od toga, mi smo svedoci, znači, kompletne razjedinjenosti u raznim segmentima, uzimajući da, na primjer, i kvote, one migracione, nisu bile prihvaćene od mnogih zemalja, još 2016. u februaru i tako dalje. Znači, postavlja se pitanje sistemsko. Da li mi možemo danas uopšte da govorimo o celini Evropske unije? Ako govorimo o pozicioniranju na tom geostrateškom polju, znači tu ima već jako puno radova analitičkih, počeo, evo, citirat ću Robert Schuman fondaciju, gde se vrlo zabrinuto pitaju da li u stvari zaista Evropska unija se može postaviti kao jedna uopšte celina prema Sjedinjenim državama i prema Rusiji, prema Kini i tako dalje. Tako da smo mi tu svakako kao jedan sa strane, što bi rekli, treća strana, ne članica, kompletan region, a posebno Srbija, posebno u još lošijoj situaciji, jer ne znamo koji su to vetrovi, koji sasvim su baš signali. S jedne strane vidimo da su neke vrlo negativne stavke, a s druge strane imamo i nešto što možda daje nadu. Znači, ne postoji zaista jedan ujedinjeni spoljno-politički stav. I to je sada problem ne samo na teorijskom planu, ali ali će tek biti, ja mislim, tako da prognoze nisu baš sjajne, a ovo što smo danas čuli od, koliko sam videla, vrlo eminentnih spikera je da u narednom periodu, znači za narednih 5 godina, ne treba se radujemo da ćemo neku plavu zastavu okačiti. Ja sam bila nedavno u Rumuniji i moram da kažem, na Pravnom fakultetu sam držala predavanje, gde su oni govorili o globalizaciji, to je sad najmodernija tema, i to se i u Moskvi desilo isto u martu, znači sad je globalizacija, uopšte više nije toliko bitno regionalno. I kad malo uzmemo taj makro aspekt, onda vidimo da u stvari pitanje, mi smo i dalje sad tu zaglavljeni u nekim lokalnim pričama, ja sam malo se konsultovala i sa ambasadorkom Australije i o njenim utiscima, zaista opravdano smo u našim problemima, ali činjenica da neće ni moći ni Evropska unija da se tako lako liši Balkana i ja bih na kraju zaključila da to je jedna fatalna privlačnost između Balkana i same Evropske unije koja je u stvari u jednom zaista sistemskom problemu i teško je sada uopšte govoriti o tim trendovima generalnim. I ja bih se podsjetila onog na početku što je predstavnik Friedrich Ebert fondacije rekao da se mi u stvari bavimo nekom, ja bih to sad nazvala politička hiromantija, to često kažem mom kolegi Zečeviću, ali možda neka vrsta astrologije političke kako će. I volim da se držim onda pravnih odrednica, to je kao nešto čvrsto dok se ne promene. Ne, nego ako imate u vidu da će Evropski parlament, ako se slože glavne političke buduće, ta većina, možda pokrenuti inicijativu za reviziju Lisabonskog sporazuma, jer se već puno govori o tome unazad, već jedno 5 godina, onda možemo da budemo svedoci nekih trajnih osnova.
A šta mislite o kojem bi smeru išla ta revizija?
Pa vidite, u smeru da bi se morala potvrditi, kao što je i rekao gospodin Kuban, ono što nije sprovedeno iz Lisabona, a to je smanjenje. To je francuski bio svojevremeno još, inicijativa još u Nici, a zatim je u Lisabonu ozvaničeno i to nije sprovedeno, smanjenje komisije. Znači, na tih 14 famoznih članova umjesto 28. Zatim u smeru, molim?
15.
Pa dobro, ali 14, pošto Britanija će da izađe, pa će to biti onda 27, to će biti to. Zatim, znači, ako uzmemo u obzir da će se ipak desiti taj Brexit. Zatim, pitanje što se tiče samog ustrojstva ovlašćenja parlamenta. Svakako da će ići dalje jačanje, jer to je zahtev građana, običnih. I moramo da budemo svesni, ako malo iole putujemo, svi smo proveli vreme, evo, Marko je svedok, ja verujem, skoro je bio u Holandiji, većina građana članica Evropske unije doživljava je kao poresko opterećenje. Znači, i to treba imati u vidu, jačanje parlamenta kao u stvari jedinog legitimnog predstavnika koji se sada doživljava. Zašto se sada piše i govori o evropeizaciji nacionalnih politika? Jer su shvatili da upravo te globalne probleme ne mogu rešiti na nacionalnom nivou. Tako da će ići svakako institucionalne i pravne reforme, da li će to biti za godinu, 2 ili 5 ili 6, ali se odavno govori i o redukovanju broja poslanika sa principom srazmere, smanjenja, takozvane smanjevanja proporcija i da se uzme u obzir naravno i taj demografski element. Tako da vidimo, ja mislim da je tu rešenje za izlazak iz krize. Naravno, politički će svakako biti neophodan taj konsenzus, ne zato što navijam za pravne reforme, nego mislim da je to jedin i naravno zaboravljeni princip supsidijarnosti.
Hvala. Eto, izvolite vi sajber bezbednost još malo i onda zatvaramo konferenciju.
Mislim da je Srbija u jako dobro položaju.
Zato što njena budućnost...
Vi ste jedan od retkih koji to većina misli.
Sad ćete da me čujete. Zato što njena budućnost zavisi od nje. Srbija, da bi bila normalna zemlja što se tiče unutra, Srbija mora prvo da uđe u NATO, a onda u Evropsku uniju i zajedno sa Zapadnim Balkanom i celim Balkanom da bude odbrana južnog krila zapadne civilizacije. Ono što je problem Srbije, je ujedno i njena prednost, a to je što Srbija na Zapadnom Balkanu jedina ima snagu da povuče ceo Zapadni Balkan u Evropsku uniju, ali i da napravi veliki problem, pa ne da dovede do rata, nego ponovo do intervencije. To sve zavisi. Da li će, i time završavam, Srbija imati snage i pameti da prvi put posle 75 godina izjednači državni i nacionalni interes.
Na samom kraju, koliko ima pitanja, zahvalio bih se svim učesnicima. Kao što sam rekao na početku, mi planiramo da nam ovo bude tradicionalna konferencija, gde bi nam svake godine dolazili tradicionalni gosti koji su već bili, da formiramo jedan krug, naravno u dogovoru koliko su gosti u mogućnosti iz Slovenije i iz drugih krajeva. Još jednom hvala što ste bili danas sa nama i mislim da je konferencija, to je Sloboda rekao, nadam se da je bio iskren, kao što je Tima Tuban bio veoma iskren i direktan, kaže ove rasprave su zaista na vrhunskom svetskom nivou, tako da hvala vam što